Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Griffin,
Here.
Polinsik,
Present.
Bashir Jones, Joe Jones,
Here, present.
Casey,
Present.
Santana, Spencer.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Because this is a caucus meeting and want to make sure that we do our protocol, this public safety committee meeting is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by sub HB 197. This meeting is being held using the Zoom platform and is being live streamed on YouTube and on Cleveland's Channel 20. It can also be seen on the Cleveland City Council website and from Council's Facebook page.
Yeah.
In accordance with the Ohio Open Meetings Regulations as amended by sub HB 197, notice of this committee hearing was publicly posted. The committee hearing will be conducted as all committee hearings in accordance with the council's rules and Robert's Rules of Order. The chair will facilitate the meeting and call on persons to speak. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand option on Zoom. Please limit your comments to the matters before today's committee. As the usual practice, any actions to be voted on during the committee will be done by voice vote, called and recorded by the committee clerk. The following meetings are held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration will be conducted as virtual meetings in accordance with Ohio open meetings laws as amended by sub HB 197. And once again, the public can observe these meetings on YouTube. Good morning, everybody. And I already see a hand from Councilman Polinsik. Go ahead. You're on mute, Councilman.
Okay.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. You referred to this as a caucus meeting.
Yes.
What,
We don't have any matters before us. This really is a caucus meeting to really establish an agenda and
Okay.
establish the criteria of what we want to accomplish for this upcoming year.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So this is pretty, for those who are joining us, this is informal. This is really where we have to do public notice because it is a majority of us on the committee. So we have to do this public notice, but this really is to hear from members of this committee as well as other council members so that we can establish an agenda and also get the appropriate documents from the administration that we would like to so that we can appropriately deliberate when we do business next year. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about format or anything else? Okay. All right. As I just told Councilman Polinsik, today is really an informal meeting where I really know that we have a tough job with the safety committee this upcoming year. And I want to put us in a position to request all of the documentation that we would like from the administration in advance. That's one of the reasons why we had the GPOs sent to you. That's the reason why we had the union contract sent to you. And that's the reason why we had the consent decree sent to you. So you have all of those documents electronically that you can refer to. I know that Councilman Polinsik has also asked for a few documents. Those documents are fluid. They actually get updated regularly, but I will request that we get those on a regular basis as well. But the purpose of this meeting is really to establish an agenda and really identify the focus areas that this committee will focus on beginning January the 6th, when our first meeting will take place, Wednesday, January the 6th. As we go throughout the entire year. We will be meeting bi-weekly, and I want to just give all the members an opportunity before I draw up the final agenda, an opportunity to give input on what you would like to discuss so that we can make sure that we have hearings that you're interested in, as well as really understand what some of the priorities are for your ward, as well as for our city. So that being said, I will announce that the first meeting will be held on January the 6th, Wednesday, January the 6th. And In that meeting, we have 2 pieces of legislation, and we will also discuss the after action report for the civil unrest that took place on May the 30th. After that, we don't have any agenda items, so that's why we're going to go around to each and every member and really identify what are your priorities for this committee, what would you like to see. I might do a little general prodding based on some of your past comments to really try to get a sense of what are some of the key things that you want to focus on. With that being said, I do have a hand up for Mike Polincic, and then I do have a hand up for Councilman Tony Brancatelli. Councilman Polincic. And Ann Tilly will be keeping notes for all of us so that we can make sure we refer to notes on this as well, okay? So go ahead, Councilman Polincic.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to get this straight then. So there's going to be nobody from the administration appearing today.
Yes, the administration will be appearing after cabinet between 10:45 and 11 o'clock.
Okay.
And we will have an opportunity to have some discussions with them at 10:45. I just wanted us to talk first so that we can establish priorities, and then we'll bring the administration in at 10:45.
Okay, so I don't know if you can even see, my screen went dark, so I don't know what happened
We
here.
can see you.
Okay, well then, let me say this, Mr. Chairman. So then let me start off this process, if I may, from what I've been experiencing this, not only this past year, but beyond as well. In all my time in this August body, I've never experienced the criminal behavior, activity, and violent crime that I've experienced this year, and really longer than this year. As I said before, I grew up in a community where it was the United Nations of criminals. Okay, when I was a much younger man, you had everybody. You had Italian, Irish, Slovenian, Jewish, Black, you name it all. We had them. We had every type of character in the world. And not only just in my neighborhood, but historically across the country, waterfront cities, lakefront cities, riverfront cities have always experienced a higher level of crime. If you look at crime patterns, it's always been in waterfront cities. You've had always a larger increase in criminal activity than in other cities. But the level of violence and the senseless violence that we've experienced is unprecedented. And when you look at the population of the city of Cleveland, we're about 50th in population based on the previous census data. And now we are ranked among the top most violent cities in the country. And we supposedly have a higher per capita homicide rate than Chicago, New York, LA. That should send shockwaves through not only this body, but throughout all concerned Cleveland residents. So what I've been looking for and been waiting to hear is a game plan coming out of the command staff, out of the administration, is how they're going to address this problem. We talked about it during the budget hearings earlier this year about the levels, the staffing levels. The administration, the command staff was totally off the mark as it pertains to how many officers they needed to backfill people who are leaving due to retirement and attrition. Again, not only did we talk about it earlier this year, but we talked about it last year earlier. And the same thing, any business worth its salt, I don't care if it's a McDonald's restaurant, has to know how many people they need to have on staff. And for some reason, this police department cannot get a hand on how many people they need. And as a result, we see this domino effect, to my honorable colleagues and to the chairman, through one critical section after another, whether it be the homicide unit, sex crimes unit, domestic violence unit, traffic unit. So, and then you talk to officers, and it's no secret, I have a very close working relationship with people in the 5th district, as I did in the old 6th district. And you talk to the rank and file, as I do quite frequently, and they tell me constantly, Councilman, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people to do basic, to do the patrolling that we need to do in the neighborhoods, the basic response, the visibility. And the greatest deterrent to criminal activity, besides an engaged citizenry, is men and women in blue patrolling our streets. You know, we cannot, you know, I'm not a social worker. I can only deal with what what is presented to me and to my colleagues at the very moment. We know crime has a lot of roots that go back in many ways: poverty, despair. We know that lead poisoning can have an impact on behavior. We all know these things, but you're dealing with the violence that is taking place. So you're trying to respond to the violence. And just look at this last week. The kids that were killed in the city, that were shot, indiscriminate shootings. Again, going back in the day, when I was a young man and I saw the element, what I want to refer to as the old gangsters, myself, my sisters, my mother, none of us that were quote unquote civilians ever had to worry about it, because they would go at it against each other. But the general population never had to be concerned about that they were going to be a victim. Now that is no longer the case. You can be an elderly woman sitting in a house, you're going to get shot. You can be a child sitting in a car, you're going to get hit by a stray bullet. You can be someone just walking down the street, minding your own business, and you're going to lose your life for no reason. And when you talk to the victims, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not going to mention the mom's name because I know what she's gone through, to lose her son, who just happened to be couple months ago, just visiting a friend on the street, and got caught in a shootout between two groups of people and was shot in the head and then left in the street. And they had to wait because the homicide unit was tied up on other cases. And he laid in the street for over half an hour, if not longer, as people stood by. And when I talked to her on the phone, the mom, who doesn't live in our neighborhood, whose son didn't live in our community, she said all he was doing was going to visit a friend prior to going to pick up his girlfriend and take her to work. He was just visiting somebody. And another 27-year-old Black male to lose his life for nothing. And what do you say to that mom? What do you say to that mother? What do you say to that citizen? Far too many excuses are being made in this city. Too much denial of what's taking place. And I want to hear a real game plan coming out of this administration, out of this command staff, because my confidence, Mr. Chairman, in the command staff has been greatly shaken. I don't have the confidence in this command staff that I once had. I don't have it. And I'm not the only one, believe me. There's a lot of citizens out there that are questioning this command staff, because we see so often rank and file are the ones who pay the price for mistakes made, but nobody ever at the top ever pays a price in the command staff. So as we go forward and into the budget rounds, because I think these budget rounds are going to be probably one of the most important that we've ever been confronted with from a standpoint of public safety. We've got to know how many people they really need and how many people they're going to put on. And are they going to address the growing concerns? Are we really going to have community policing? Community policing, as we once said. We hear this stuff about community policing. I don't see it. And my citizens don't see it. I'm out there every day. I don't see any community policing. So we have a lot on our plate. I appreciate, as I said in an earlier email to you, I appreciate you taking this subject up, hopefully in a detail that you're going to take it up so we can really drill down and look at how this police department in 2020 and in 2021 is operating, what their plan of attack is going to be to address these these concerns and issues. I think we need to take a good look at the whole security camera fiasco, where we were promised 1,100 security cameras and council members were asked to submit lists. And then we find out that with what we submitted, that didn't take place. So my frustration is great. And my willingness to do due diligence, I can tell you, is really great. I plan, as a member of this committee, working with you, to really drill down and hold some people accountable as we go forward into 2021. Because if not, we're going to continue to lose good citizens. People are going to continue to talk with their feet, get up and get out. I'm tired of going into businesses on the east side and seeing businesses operators that have to be behind 2 inches of plexiglass to run their businesses for fear of being shot, or watching store owners walk around with 9mm on their hips, as I see in the Glenville community. I mean, this is 2020. This is America. You got to carry a gun to operate a store. I got elderly women carrying guns. And the largest group purchasing handguns, as I'm told, are women because of the violence being directed against them. Something is terribly wrong here in our lakefront city. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not happy. I'm frustrated. I'm angry with what I'm seeing. I've never had this level of violence ever in my 11 consecutive terms in this body. I've never seen a level of violence that I've experienced this year and beyond. And I'm tired of it. I want results. I want action, and I'm prepared to work with you and my colleagues to bring that about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Councilman Polensek, thank you so much. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this hearing. I want people to be able to share their frustrations so that people understand this, because once our committees kick off, it's going to be about business. And what I tell everybody is that I want to operate with a scalpel and not a mallet. I want to make sure that we are very, very intentional about what we're really trying to do with this committee. And by all means, I know that we, sometimes get an opportunity because we're frustrated, because we're all frustrated about the crime in this city, to express it at the committee hearings. But I also want us to use our times judiciously and wisely to make sure that you're getting the answers that you want. Because one thing that I will not do as a chair is allow the administration to come to the table and not have answers for what you want. That's one of the reasons why I'm having this conversation today, because I will be very much a stickler to make sure that they will bring to us in advance the things that we're looking for and the things that we want as a committee. So I hear your frustration. Let me just say a couple of things that I heard from you, Councilman, if I'm making sure. And Ann Tilley, once again, is the keeper of the notes. But you want to hear, Mike Polensek, first question is, you want to hear how they will address the problem of violence in the city. Number two, you want to hear a strategy about staffing. How many people do they really need? And really give us a number. That might be a question you might want to ask them today as they're preparing their budget. And then also specialized units. You want to really understand how the specialized units are being staffed. I would add to that, Councilman, that we need to understand the solve rate. I know last year we had a pretty good solve rate of homicides in the city. I would like to probably understand that too, to make sure that we have that. And the reason that I want to get all of this, because some of these might be joined together in sessions and some of these might need to be separated out. And Councilman Brancatelli appropriately advised me that this is not considered a caucus, that technically this is considered a hearing. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that. But we'll make sure that we follow up on those things. The other things that you wanted to hear about, which I kind of didacted from your conversations, Councilman Polensek, is the cost of hiring a police officer. If we need more officers, it's going to cost money. And I think that we really need a breakdown in their staffing plan to really understand how much it costs to totally equip, train, and keep a police officers. I have a good idea, but I want them to give us the formula. And it's our job as a council to look at the budget and try to see if there's ways that we can negotiate and look for opportunities to fund more. Because if we're asking for more police officers, it's going to cost, which means that we need to ask the administration and try to pull money from somewhere else in order to do it. So that's the reason I want to understand the cost benefit analysis of that. The other thing is random crime and crimes of opportunity versus involved crime or interpersonal crime. You kind of want to break down of that, because your sense is that we're seeing a lot more crimes of opportunity, which are like carjackings, random crime where innocent bystanders are getting shot, but you want to understand the difference between the two. And then you had also security cameras. We need an update about security cameras. Did I miss anything, Councilman, or are those kind of your major remarks?
Mr. Chairman, I think you've touched on the major components of it. I'm really looking forward to the administration, i.e. the command staff, really understanding the concerns of the body, and really accepting and understanding our concerns, and putting forth a real plan of action that's meaningful. Not just lip service, not just we're going to pacify them, but a plan that really is going to address those concerns of our citizens. Because I listen. This job has taught me to listen, and I listen every day from people calling my office. And when I hear elderly women tell me they don't feel safe, they're afraid, that sends a shockwave through me. It's like a punch to the gut, that women who've lived their whole lives and have worked so hard to maintain their family in their golden years are afraid to live in their homes, or afraid to walk down the street. I had a lady on 123rd Street office in a Glenville neighborhood tell me she's afraid to walk down her street. She's afraid to go to the store, the gas station, service station, carry out convenient at the end of her street. She's afraid to go there. I mean, something is terribly wrong that we have people in our city that are in that state, that mindset. And again, we're trying to maintain our population. We're trying to stabilize our city. We're not going to do it with high levels of crime and criminal activity. So I'm appreciative to your direction. And again, I look forward to working with my colleagues on this issue holistically, and really trying to let the administration hear. It's not about arguing or fighting. They need to understand they need to be partners with us. And at this point, I just don't feel they are partners with City Council on criminal and violence to stem that tide. Now, maybe that's going to change.
Councilman, I completely agree with you. And the only thing that I will say before I move to Councilman Brancatelli and then Councilman Jones is that I think we need to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because this council needs to be on the same page. I keep hearing what you're saying about denial. I don't think any of us have denial. I think all of us are dealing with the trauma in different ways. But I think clearly we need to make it clear as this council that we have an agenda and that all of us are going to stand tight on this agenda. And that's what I want to make sure that we accomplish. And that's why I want to hear from the body, so that as we move forward, the administration knows that it's not, we could talk to this council person or that council person, that they understand when they're dealing with the safety committee, that we mean business. So that's what I really want to accomplish, Councilman. And your thoughts are very on point, and I appreciate your passion. And once again, we all share that passion. I will go now to Councilman Tony Brancatelli, and then I have Councilman Joseph Jones on deck. Councilman Brancatelli, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, thank you for putting this meeting together. This is a great lead into our budget hearings, and as Councilman Polensek talked about, looking at our staffing levels and the different divisions and specialty units that need to be staffed. So he hit on most all the points that I wanted to raise. I just wanted to follow up. I actually have to step off this meeting for 9:30 meeting with our commander and some of our safety members who are working with our block clubs, and our commander and that team has done a great job of staying engaged with our civic groups, our block clubs, and helping to deal with those issues head on. So I just have one quick, I did text over to Annie about January 6th, I think is our committee of the whole meeting.
Is that a committee of the whole that day?
I think so.
So is that, Council President, is that January 6th committee of the whole?
Yep, that's our first meeting back.
All right.
We're out there.
Safety committee is trying to find a home. So
Okay.
we used to be on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. I was trying to get back to that, but if we're doing committee of the wholes on those days, then I probably would have to start on the 13th because I know that the staff wants to make sure that we stagger the
Every
actual
other.
committee hearings. So then I'm probably looking at the 13th then, and my apologies and thanks for clearing that up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to step out, but I'll be back in again. And thank you for putting this together.
No problem. So once again, as Councilman Brancatelli reminded us, committee of the whole is on the 6th. So our first safety committee meeting will probably have to be pushed to January the 13th. And once again, that'll still be the after action report, as well as 2 pieces of legislation. I have Councilman Joseph Jones and then Councilman Charles Slife. Remember, the administration is coming on at about 10:45. So I want to make sure that we get everybody's input as much as possible. Councilman Joe Jones, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to say thank you for establishing this session, both set standards and be able to talk about the most impactful things that are happening to our city and then safety. And so I want to thank you, Chairman Griffin, for doing that. My heart is heavy on this issue. As you may be aware, Mr. Chairman, when we were both John Joe citizens in 2017, we had a conversation on Woodland Avenue about safety. And at that time, if you recall, I was very passionate about the devastation in the neighborhood and what was happening in our community. And we talked about the need for more police officers back then. If our city, to all of my colleagues who are listening, is going to be serious about improving conditions of the city of Cleveland, there's 3 fundamental things that this city needs to do and needs to make a priority. The first one is safety. If people don't feel safe in their communities in which they live, they're going to move. And so you see an exodus of people on the east side of the city of Cleveland and throughout the city of Cleveland who have been impacted by crime. They're moving out of our communities. The second issue is education. If we don't improve the conditions of education in the city of Cleveland, if we continue to be mediocrity and some standards lower than that, then you're going to have younger families not wanting to move to the city of Cleveland and raise their families. And 3, economic development in our city needs to be evenly spread across the entire board. We need to have strong economic development and investments in the east side, just as we're having it on the west side, downtown, in University Circle, as well as in Little Italy. All of these things are important because they are a part of the reasons why we're in the conditions as it relates to the social ills in our communities. We have failed to educate the future of the citizens of the city of Cleveland. We have failed to keep them safe, and we failed to invest in our communities in an equal way. And because of it, the east side of the city of Cleveland has been devastated. And as I stand here today and submit to you, a number of Black African-American leadership within the city of Cleveland is very upset, very angry. A number of ministers to such a degree that they're talking about this issue matter as we even speak here today and what to do about it. As my colleague, Mike Polensik, made the comments earlier, I wholeheartedly agree with everything he said. And to take it another level, we're getting our houses shot up. We're having random drive-by shootings on the east side where homes are being shot up. We got people who right now in my neighborhood are vandalizing when people are asleep. They're walking up shopping, busting out their windows in their cars. They're sitting in their driveways. I've complained about this. We still haven't caught these guys. We have issues like that. We're getting robbed on our sidewalks. We're getting robbed in our shopping plazas. We got homicides. I had a homicide detective call me, not detective, but a investigator called me yesterday about 2 homicides where 2 young men were gunned down in their driveways on Walden Avenue. We have a situation where our senior citizens have never seen the level of violence in our community. And then when you step over to just basic traffic patrol and doing that in terms of enforcing the laws, we don't have any traffic police officers. People are being killed. I had a young lady on Harvard hit. She got her head fractured. She got her hip broke. She got her knee torn apart. She got her elbow smashed. And so the cars are running through our community like when they know they get into the city of Cleveland, there's no rules. There's no enforcement. So I don't know where and what our police are doing in terms of being consistent, but we need consistency in terms of policing in our neighborhood. And so, Mr. Chairman, I submit to you that we need to look at how we need to take a full, thorough accounting of our police department. And so I would ask my colleagues that we should start looking at getting an outside assessment. The council should be able to get the resources to do this and have an independent person come in and take a full, thorough assessment of our police department, how it operates, and how we can get to a place like Chagrin, Solon, Shaker, where we're keeping our citizens safe. We have to keep our community safe. If we don't do that, we're going to find ourselves continuing to lose population. And as many of you know in your wards, especially on the east side of the city of Cleveland, we're being decimated. And so, and I shared this story with you, a young lady who, and I won't say her name, she works in the city, and she lived in my neighborhood. And it was my first year being in office, 2018. And I recall having a conversation with her. And she says, I'm about to leave out of your neighborhood, and I hate I'm leaving out of the community as you're getting in. But I have to leave. And I said, well, why do you have to leave the neighborhood? She says, my house was broken in a year ago. And when it was broken into, the police officers came in, took a police report, but never heard anything from them at all whatsoever. I put my house back together. Within 60 days, my house was broken into again. I was disturbed about it, thought about moving at that time, but decided to put my house back together. And councilman, just 2 months ago, my house got broken into again. And so after putting cameras around her property, after securing her home, after making all the necessary investments, she's no longer a citizen in the city of Cleveland, only due to the fact that in all of those break-ins, there was a police report that was done. There was no dusting of fingerprints. There was no real police work being done at the crime scenes. And that's one of the things I talked about at the table. How do we do our work? If we are spending money, we need to really do police work. So there's a culture in the police department that we're going to have to take a look at. And there is a situation, Mr. Chairman, that if you would entertain the look of taking an accounting, because truly being the chairman of the committee, you won't know all the bits or parts and pieces unless there's a thorough accounting of how we do our work and what are the best practices and how we can make our neighborhood safer, as well as taking an assessment of the number of police that we have here in the city of Cleveland. My next request would be, we've always had a report on our individual wards that were always prepared for us on a daily basis. We do have those reports, but we have to go now and do a process to go and organize those reports. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for that to be restored as it used to be. Individual council members had individual reports. We're paying, $300+ million for our safety forces, if not 400 million total. When you look at it all and with all of the various different funds that are coming in from Washington, D.C. in terms of grants. So it makes no sense to me, Mr. Chairman, that we as individual council members in our wards representing 25,700 people apiece should not be having our individual reports on a daily basis about the issues that are happening in our communities. That's number one. And then number two, when we look at, Mr. Chairman, as we move down the process, and I don't know how you want to set it up and put it in place, but we need to really fundamentally break down each district, how it operates, as well as, if you don't get that independent audit process started now, how do these various different departments function and work? And then also, Mr. Chairman, where's the heaviest crime totals? So we should have like a map that will show us in the city of Cleveland what that is and what that looks like. Back in 1988, 89, 90, we started to experiencing high rates of crime. And Mr. Polensik might recall that particular period of time in the city of Cleveland, where we started to first getting like gang violence and drive-by shootings. And we never in this city had drive-by shootings. And then I can remember Mount Sinai Baptist Church, Charles Matthews, Reverend Charles Matthews, and a number of the clergy got together with then various different community activists like Omar Ali Bey, Khalid Samad, Mr. Box, and others to organize these people to get them together to stop the chaos that we were seeing rear its head in our city. And they were very effective and efficient at that time, moving into then Mike White's administration as the new mayor of the city of Cleveland. And then we just saw it disappear. So whatever it was that group, that community activism, and what they brought to the table to deal with the gang violence in that particular period, we should look at, can we get that recreated? Can we start dealing with the ongoing violence that is happening on the east side of the city of Cleveland? And I think Mike Polensik used the words epic. We are in a place of epic violence. And I'll tell you, as an elected official, I'm afraid. I'm afraid for my son to drive down the street. I'm afraid to go myself down the street. And I'm always looking behind my shoulders. So as a human being, to feel unsafe in your community is a major issue. And so with that being said, I've never seen it this bad. And sometimes I wonder, because sitting at that safety committee for the entire 3 years and not hearing my other colleagues respond, kind of said, well, maybe they're not having crime in their neighborhoods. But I'm getting my system handed to me out here in this crime. And Mr. Chairman, you see me coming into council when you ask me questions. Why do you look so frustrated? Why are you so upset? Well, I'm upset because I have issues out in my neighborhood and I'm not getting those issues resolved. I do want to thank those police officers, though, who have worked very hard, who are exhausted, who are in the 4th district, who have given it their all. And the only thing they've asked me is, can we get more police? We're burnt out. And that's in the 4th district. And they have left and tried to get out of the 4th district because they're so burnt out. And so, Mr. Chairman, we got, $80 million in the rainy day fund. If there was no other time that we could start looking at those funds to spend it to get more police down on the ground, it should be now. And so, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues, I really appreciate your leadership and opening this up so it can be vented out. I will get a number of my requests to you, Mr. Chairman, in writing. The number one thing that we need over here in our district, if we could have another 40 to 50 police officers in our district, in the 4th district, if we could have, and we should look into traffic enforcement in our city. There's no way in the world that we should have only two traffic enforcement cars serving the entire 4th district that serves 6 wards, and all we have is 2 traffic cars enforcing the traffic in our area. To me, Mr. Chairman, it's absolutely unacceptable. The plan that's in place right now to keep our neighborhood safe is not working. So we need a new one. And if we don't get it, we're going to continue to lose as a city. We're going to lose businesses as we've been losing them. we're going to lose residents as we've been losing residents. And if we're going to be a city serious about improving our population and bringing people back to the city of Cleveland, the number one issue right now in my book, and has always been my book, is safety. We must bring safety back to the city of Cleveland. And with that, may God bless all of those people who are out there who have been victims of crime, who, have suffered and endured violence. My family and I am praying for you, and for those police officers who work, the ones who work hard. I want to thank you for your dedication and your commitment to our citizens, and I appreciate the hard work that you do. And to my colleagues who are here assembled, we have a great task before us. That task is to be serious about improving the conditions of safety in our community. And our whole sense of stability and sanity lasts upon how soon we can make our city safe. And then to such a degree where hopefully one day we can brag about our city being the safest city in Northeast Ohio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. And Councilman Jones, I'm gonna hold you on record because you were actually within your 15-minute time period. So if you could do it today, I know you could do it for the rest of the year. So I just appreciate your comments. You did a great job. But that was my trial run to see if you would do 15, and I see you clearly would do 15. So thank you so much for your comments. I did, before I go to Councilman Slife and also Councilwoman Spencer, if I heard the councilman correctly, and I think he's off the screen, but I want to make sure that he's on, because he may want to ask a question of Jen Chach when she comes on. But he has the need for more police officers and enforcing traffic police, comparison of best practices, and looking at an assessment by like either a PERF, police executive resource firm or something like that, which is an outside group that can do an assessment. I believe there has been a couple of assessments, and we should be able to look at that. That actually gives us that background of an independent assessment. I'll look to see if we can get that. Report needs to be prepared for neighborhoods. I know that they said that there's some technological glitches for that. You might want to be on at 10:30 when you talk to Jennifer Chach so that you can get a clarification on why we cannot get the actual breakdown per ward. And that's something that I think that the reason I have her coming on at 10:30 to really get that done. The other thing is, which I think is a very good idea, is that we should look at some kind of district tabletop exercise where you actually can go to the district and see how they deploy and actually get an understanding from beginning to end how police officers and how the police department deploys traffic officers, how they deploy homicide units, how the different levers get pulled. And that's something I'll try to arrange as some kind of tabletop exercise so that we could actually see how the police department actually deploys resources in our neighborhood. The other thing is a heat map. You want to see a heat map to see where the crime is happening. And then also, you think we should recreate the Commission on Black Males, which is basically where the activists and the pastors and several others got together and had a commission in place that actually worked on trying to address these solutions from the activist level. And then also, can we use more rainy day funds? That'll be something that we'll have a discussion about in the budget hearings. But once again, I'd like for you to get a good sense of, if you're asking for using rainy day funds, how much? Let's be precise. I'm saying we need X amount of dollars from the rainy day fund that we believe should be used for police officers. And of course, that's a back and forth between the administration and us, but I want to give you to be more specific when you talk about using some of those rainy day funds, or when you want to identify where we need to pull funds from in order to try to get more police officers that you're looking at. Because once again, police officers do cost, and I want to make sure that when we float that, is it something that we can actually afford? Councilman Jones, I don't know if you're still on, but did I capture your comments correctly?
Yes, you did, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. And you might want to stay on for Jennifer Chach, because a couple of those questions that you had about breaking down the information would be good. I really like the idea that you had about the tabletop exercise, and I do think that we should do that in every district with the council people to really get a sense of how our resources deployed in our area. I'm gonna also kick it to John James, and I know that John is on now. At some point in John, and you and Ann Tilly, we probably should do an assessment comparing Cleveland to other cities regarding our staffing levels. I know that in the past we had more officers per capita than places like Columbus and Toledo and some of those places. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but we need to understand that. And then we need to understand kind of best practices of what some people are doing in order to bring down the homicide rate, in order to bring down some of these violent activities. So if there's other cities that we could look at as comparable cities, comparable in size, comparable in scale, maybe Indianapolis, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Columbus, some of those other cities, Cincinnati, that we could actually get a sense of where our police department is at regarding resources compared to other cities. And that's budgeting as well as staffing, if I can have them work with us on that. Councilman Jones, you had a follow-up on that conversation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure that I think the best way to approach this is to have a outside audit of our entire police department, how it works, and what are the best practices and how we can be more efficient. I think right there starts just from having a foundation, a boilerplate to work from.
And I'll check and see, Councilman, because I think that there were a couple of assessments done, and that's why I want to make sure that we get.
I'm aware, Mr. Chairman, of those assessments, and there were inside assessments. We need to have an outside assessment. And Mr.
Your
Chairman,
recommendation is that council pays for one?
Council, the administration, we need to set it. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, our program is not working. And so right now, because it's broken so many areas, thoroughly broken up, that we need to fundamentally understand why, how, and as council members, there's no way in the world we will sit here and be able to try to figure all of that out in 6 or 7 or 8 years with a 15-minute rule on every single council member, and then all the council members want to speak. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is, Mr. Chairman, we need to have an outside, independent, complete assessment audit of our police department and best practices and what we need to be doing to keep our citizens safe. Our department is so huge and so large, there's nowhere in the world we will be able as a council to be able to do that ourselves. And the assessment programs that are in place right now, apparently they have not worked. And so at the end of the day, having something that's outside, independent of the city, Mr. Chairman, is just like anything else. You have an outside auditor for your business. We need to audit this department, and we need to know what's what. And Mr. Chairman, I submit to you that should be our first course of action. And we can still, walk and chew gum at the same time in terms of all the other activities we want to do. But having that will give us the tools and the fundamentals to set this department in play to be a department that really does what it says it's supposed to do: protect our citizens and serve our community. And right now, it's not doing that.
Duly noted, and I will actually see what we could actually pull up and see what we can come up with. And the ones assessments that I was talking about were not internal, they were actually external. But I hear your point, and let's see what we can come up with, okay? I have Jenny Spencer and then Charles Slife. Mrs. Spencer, you have the floor, and then I'll go to Charles Slife. Once again, I know that you're a new member, this is really a hearing for us to shape the upcoming agenda for this year. So this is your opportunity to really kind of say what's important to you, what are some key things you want us to focus on, and really kind of give us some guidance on what's important to you and the constituents of Ward 15. Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for convening this conversation this morning. I appreciate that a time is needed for everyone to do this kind of round robin of expressing our questions and priorities, so I appreciate that. I don't want to be repetitive with what my colleagues, Councilman Polensek and Councilman Jones, have already stated. However, I do want to reiterate that as a new member of this committee, I think a grounding in the basics will be very helpful. And what I mean by the basics are, I think we have this perception, certainly Councilman Polensek spoke very passionately about it, that our crime rates are unacceptable and they're going up. And I think I need some data, right? I think we all would benefit from that data. I look forward to speaking with Sergeant Chach about those breakdowns that were mentioned so we can understand them at the neighborhood level, at the ward level. But nonetheless, I think just a basic assessment of crime and crime trends in the city would be extremely helpful. In terms of staffing, I agree with my colleagues that is the department fully staffed? If not, what is the staffing plan? Are there gaps in the current staffing? But one thing I haven't heard colleagues mention yet is diversity of staffing in the police department. So as the department seeks to fill empty positions and so on, I know that we want to have a police force that to the very best of our ability reflects the diversity of the residents we serve. And so I want to keep that conversation at the forefront. So as we're talking about any one of these matters, I think it's very important to talk about the diversity of the force as well. So not just the need, but the approach. So I think, again, I don't want those things to be viewed separately. I think they need to be discussed together. A few more questions for now. One is in terms of our first meeting on January 13th, Mr. Chair, you mentioned that there will be 2 pieces of legislation, and then that would also be the opportunity to review the May 30th civil unrest after action review. I'm concerned about having enough time for that. It's a lengthy report. There's a lot of detail in it. There's a lot of that conversation should be given its due time. So I'm not being familiar with how these committee meetings are typically structured. I just want to make sure that the scheduling does take place in such a way that we really are all prepared. And then that if possible, if you have asks of us as the committee to come, what do you need from us for that to be a productive discussion? If that's our first meeting right out, first of the year, knowing that there's also some business that needs to be attended to in terms of legislation, I just want to make sure that we have the adequate time to review that May 30th after action review as a committee. In terms of some big picture matters that I think are top of mind for Ward 15, I want my colleagues to know that I do stand in solidarity. I think no matter where I go in my ward, people suffer as victims of crime, and that cuts across socioeconomics, it cuts across racial diversity. I mean, I think that is a theme throughout, not only this ward, but obviously our whole city. So no one should live in fear. And so I recognize that this is top of mind for constituents. That said, I have also in Ward 15, some of the most passionate social justice advocates that you have ever met, and very fortunate to have such strong leaders and such strong advocates in our community. I know that one thing that's top of mind for them, you mentioned the consent decree very early in this meeting today, Mr. Chair, but really hopefully dedicating a meeting to really understanding the status, how has the department performed, what is the future of police oversight in Cleveland. I think that's really essential that we understand where we've been, where we're headed, where we've been with it, where we're going, where we are, and where we're headed. With the notion of police oversight is incredibly important. I also would like to personally know more about Operation Legend. And I know that politics are shifting in our country in many ways at the same time. Right now, we have a lot of changes at the the local, the regional, the national level, and some of this may be in play as well. But I know that those were federal resources that were brought into Cleveland. And I will be really honest that as much as I admit, as anyone else on this council, that gun violence is a terrifying problem. I just had a homicide in my ward 2 evenings ago at 5 o'clock, basically 5 o'clock in the evening on one of our busiest streets, West 65th Street. And I mean, it's absolutely unacceptable. It's absolutely terrifying. And it is my understanding that that's what Operation Legend was specifically designed to address. But I was also very nervous from the beginning, not knowing about, as much as I want to know about anti-bias policing and how far we've come in Cleveland with that consent decree, with working together with our police department to make sure that we're serving our diverse community in a way where everyone feels safe. When you're bringing in external partnerships like that, like Operation Legend, do we have confidence that they too are united in those shared values? And so I think that, so that's just, not all of this needs to be addressed at once, but I think today, as you said, is our opportunity to get things out on the table that over the course of time, as the committee looks at various issues, what my questions are and what are, I think, top of mind as well for Ward 15 residents.
First of all, thank you so much, Councilwoman, and you bring up some great perspective that we're really looking at. Just want to make sure I capture some of your documents, and I totally agree with you that we want to basically make decisions based on data. So you really want to get the data breakdown of the, regarding the crime trends. And I believe that there is a report that we can address that too. And what we will do is we will tell Jennifer Chach that when we meet with her, when she comes on at about 10:30. But we'll get a breakdown, because what I want to do is arm you with as much information as possible so that when we do begin to meet in January, all of the information you want pretty much is there already. That includes the after action report, which I'll get to in a minute, okay? The staffing plan, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I know Councilman Bashir Jones is not here, but diversity and staffing. I've been monitoring this closely since I've gotten on the safety committee, and there are some encouraging numbers coming out of the police department. I'm still waiting to see fires, but I'll wait for them to kind of give you some background. But I do believe that that needle is moving in the right direction regarding diversity and hiring. But we'll get that assessment from them and really drill down. That's one of the things that we asked for, and that we'll get that report, and we'll follow up with them on that today. So that's another Jennifer Chach item that we'll make sure that we'll get, okay? The May 30 action report, make sure we have enough time to review this. It's my assessment that the pieces of legislation that we have are pretty perfunctory. They're not very heavy lifts. So if I'm anticipating the right way, I believe that we should be able to get done with those pieces of legislation and give ourselves ample time to ask questions and really dig into the after action report. So the one thing that I plan on doing as I schedule, Councilwoman, just so that you know, is that I would keep certain days just for legislation. And then when I do hearings, it'll be just strictly whatever the topic is. But because we haven't met in December, I got to kind of get those two pieces of legislation in that are time sensitive. And then I'm going to ask everybody to bear with me so that we can get that after action report and really do a deep dive into that on January the 13th, okay? The consent decree, I'm sure you and Councilman Casey has a lot of interest in the consent decree, but here's what I want everybody to start thinking about with the consent decree. We're probably going to get dinged with another year or so, another 2 years, because I think we've been in it for 5 years. But I think we need to really start pivoting to what do we as a council want to codify, and what do we want to legislate out of the consent decree. And we need to start dividing that out now so that even when we're out of federal oversight, what as a council do we want to start to legislate? So I want us to start thinking about that as we start to round third and head home with the consent decree. I also want to recognize what policies that we think we want to put in place, because we don't want to have all this money that we spent, all of this time put into a consent decree just to find out that we'll be back at ground zero in another 4 or 5 years and having problems with constitutional policing again. So if all of us can keep in the back of our mind what we want to codify, what policies we want to pull out of it, what's going to stick, so that we know that we really got culture change that's going to last for a long time. And then you wanted to hear about Operation Legend. And we will get an update from Operation Legend, as well as the NOVAC, Northeast Ohio Violent Crimes Coalition, so that we can see about all of those different entities. And one of the things, Councilwoman, that I plan on doing is also bringing in any adjacent police forces. So like Cleveland Clinic, UH, all of those different police forces, we're going to bring them in too, to see if they share the same values that we do as a department, and really push that if we're going to do memorandums with them, that there's certain things that they have to agree about with us as well. So we have about 6 ancillary police departments that patrol our area and have policing powers, like RTA, Cleveland State University, CASE, University Hospitals, CMHA. So we're going to have a session where we bring all them in as well. Okay. All right. Did I capture your questions correctly, Councilwoman, or did I miss anything?
You captured them, and I won't hesitate to ask additional questions going forward.
That's what we want everybody to do. And keep in mind that my goal is to make sure you have as much information as possible going into a meeting, so that you can be adequately prepared. Because I see you're one that really likes to be prepared when you go into those meetings. So we'll make sure you have that documentation, okay? All right, thanks, Councilwoman, appreciate your comments. Next up, I have Charles Slife, and then I have Brian Casey, and I do see Jasmine Santana if she wanted to say anything, but Charles Slife, you have the floor, and then Brian Casey after that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for holding this, and also for letting me sit in. I'm obviously not a member of the Safety Committee, but you and I were talking last week, and there's a couple things that I'm interested in, so I'm happy to be involved in this and in other ways. As my colleagues have said, violent crime is up around the city. That's true in West Park. There's been a number of violent carjackings. There was a drive-by shooting a few weeks ago. And, Councilman Casey and I actually held a joint community meeting with Commander Fay to try to get information out to our residents, because there's a real level of anxiety. And others have touched on it. I want to expand on it a little further. One of my big things is cameras. The discussions on camera locations predate me. From speaking with a number of rank and file officers, my understanding is that the only cameras that were placed in Ward 17 were placed at the Gunning Recreation Center. To have one camera in 5 square miles is obviously not going to be effective, and to put it at a city facility as the only location really makes it look like we're securing our interests and not trying to secure the interest of the residents. The crime is up across the city, and obviously it's happening. It's more stark in other places. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Ward 17 is the highest crime neighborhood. It's not, but I think there's a reality that if resources such as cameras are put in one place, it's going to cause a shift of crime towards places where people know that there aren't cameras. And a real concern of mine is, you get off of Interstate 90, and if you go left, you're in Cleveland. If you go right, you're in Lakewood. And the word's out. People know that Lakewood has cameras, and people know that, if you cross West 117th Street, they've got you on camera all the way through the city of Lakewood. And maybe they're not able to watch you commit the crime. They're able to track your progression through the city. And that's been effective for them. And people know that happens in municipalities that surround us, but not in Cleveland. And, to me, we have a overbuilt road network that allows people to speed through our city, get on the interstate, and get out of Dodge. And we have to use cameras in order to combat some of that. Additionally, something I've been thinking of that I'd love to speak with you about more, Mr. Chair, it seems too often a crime occurs and the Division of Police go to, property owners, large property owners, and say, do you have security camera footage? And, oh, the security cameras weren't working, or the data isn't held for a long enough period. And it really seems that there should be some sort of regulation on large property owners, commercial areas, of having cameras and making those cameras available in the easiest fashion to the Division of Police. I know that the county has a program where property owners can register and in real time, police departments can get access to cameras that are owned and operated on private property. And knowing that we're a municipality and we have a limited budget, I think that we should be looking at all options to increase our camera coverage. And I think that could possibly be one of them. A couple of my colleagues have touched on, people leaving the city, and I have a victim of a carjacking on 182nd Street who has, sold her home. And when I spoke with her, just said, it was a traumatic experience, and it was a traumatic experience. And I bring that up because that can only happen so many times before we really start to undercut even what are perceived to be our stable neighborhoods. And it's something that we have to be taking seriously and that we have to put all of our resources towards, because it's 100% a big deal. Kind of going through my list in no certain order. Dirt bikes, I've heard from rank and file police officers that when dirt bikes are confiscated, they ultimately end up back at a police auction and they can be purchased at basement prices by the people who they were confiscated from in the first place. I think that we need to look at destroying dirt bikes when they're confiscated and turn that into a good social media event as a deterrence. There's a lot of questions that I get from my residents about the chase policy. And, not being on this committee, I'll admit that maybe there's misperceptions on what it is, or maybe it is overly restrictive. I don't know for certain the answer to that yet, but I think that it's something that needs to be looked at, because the real perception in the community is that it's overly deferential to the criminal. And people know that they're not going to be chased, so they go to places and commit crimes and just drive even faster, and then they know the police will have to back off. So I'd like to understand that more, so that both I and the residents can have a better concept of what our police officers are being held to right now, and to what degree we need to revise that policy. I'm going to put on my Donald Brady hat for a moment and say mini stations. I know that this has come up in years past in budget hearings and in my different connections with Cleveland City Hall. And I guess I've just never understood why the answer is no. They've seemed to have been a great resource. They were appreciated by the residents. I can't imagine that it costs that much. And it allows patrol officers a place where they can build those relationships with residents. And I don't understand why that isn't taken more seriously, or why it isn't a viable option. So I really would like to push the administration on reestablishing mini stations and a deeper explanation on why there's a reluctance from them to do so. As for staffing, in addition to the cost of bringing people on, I think we really need to do a dive into the cost of losing officers, not to retirement, but our officers receive more calls for service and are underpaid relative to suburban districts. And if you're able to drive 20 minutes further out, you can be making more money, have maybe more job flexibility, have less stress, feel safer. And, when individual leaves, and it costs the city of Cleveland money to cover that vacancy and then ultimately bring somebody on. And I would like to know, do we need to be paying our officers more to keep them on our division of police? Or do we need to be, and this could go citywide, but do we need to be looking at our human resources policies to allow more flexibility to meet people where they are for their family circumstances and everything? Like, to what degree are we a desirable workplace? That, as I said, that's applicable to our entire organization, but it's especially applicable to the Department of Public Safety. I had mentioned this, and it's maybe it's a little ancillary, but when we're looking at capital projects, Councilman Jones mentioned a woman getting hit by a car on Harvard. Our streets are too wide and people speed, and we need traffic enforcement, but I also think we need to be looking at ways to slow traffic down. And that has the dual benefit of making it safer for people going about our neighborhood, through our neighborhoods, but it also makes it more difficult for people to commit a crime on one side of town, be on the interstate within 2 minutes, and then be miles and miles away before it's even possible to get multiple zone cars to a location. So I think that there's this could be built into a number of different conversations. As for capital projects, my last thing, when it comes to those other police departments that operate in the city, the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Parks, what have you, I want to know how can we ensure that they are being held to the same standard that our officers are? And one of the ways that comes to mind is cameras. If you are a Cleveland police officer, you're obligated to wear a camera on you. Should that not be true for all officers operating in the city of Cleveland, regardless of the uniform or car they're driving? And I'd be interested in that, because I certainly don't want our officers to feel that we're holding them to a standard, but then not holding others to the very same one. With that, I'll yield my time over. I could keep going, but I'll just end it with, it's when I speak with the first district and I talk to different officers, one of my big challenges is figuring out what additional resources are necessary for them to be more successful, more strategic, and what can we do on council side to make sure we're providing them. We're, at the end of the day, we're not the law enforcement officers, but we provide the resources to them. And I want to make sure that we are doing our part to ensure that we're giving them what they need to be, and we know what they need to be successful, not just what they can do within their recommended budget. And I think we need to probe a little deeper into that. So with that, thank you for letting me join. I've been here long enough to guess that you're going to read some of this stuff back to me. So I'll turn the microphone over to you for that.
I just want to make sure that, and the only reason, and I promise that when we have our meetings, I will not regurgitate questions, but for right now, I want to make sure that I'm clear on what you're really making sure, because my goal is to work with Ann Tilley and make sure that the administration sees some of our concerns once again, so that we can try to prepare in advance and not just try to figure it out while we're at the table. So that's one of the things we want to do. But you have a challenge with carjacking. You want to understand more about the camera locations and why are they placed at the rec centers. Now, I've heard why they are placed at rec centers, but I want the police to describe it. I'm not here to defend them or talk about why they made decisions, but they need to tell you why. And we'll work through that process to make sure that they tell you why, okay? And also, I'm curious about how we can get other cameras placed. But large property owners should make their cameras available. That might be something that we should look at internal, Mr. Slight, to see if there's a way that we could actually make that happen. And maybe some things we could do as city council. But let's kick that around with Rachel to see what we could do. Dirt bikes at police auctions. We need to verify if that is the case, that they actually are just taking dirt bikes to police auctions and then selling them right back. And if that is the case, that's asinine and counterproductive. So that's something that we'll look into. The chase policy, I know that Councilman Casey is probably going to talk about that more, so I'll wait for his comments. mini stations. Why is the answer no? I want the administration to tell us. I know that some people in the past have heard why, but I want them to tell us why mini stations cannot, and we can't have mini station police officers. The cost of losing a police officer, that's a good one. Do we need to pay more, or do we need to be more flexible with police officers to make the incentive better for them to actually work here? I know that they get more points by living in the city of Cleveland, but are there other incentives that we can look at to really encourage them to stay in the city? Then you had, we need to look at ways to slow traffic down. I couldn't agree more. That's something that I think a lot of us want to do with especially some of these super blocks to really slow down traffic. And then how can we know what the other departments are being held accountable? For example, wearing body cameras and other things like that. Did I capture your comments, Mr. Slife, or did I miss anything?
Nailed it. Great.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Slife. Councilman Casey, then I have Santana, and then I see that Councilman Jones is back up for questioning. But Councilman Casey, you're first, then Councilman Santana, then Councilman Jones. So Councilman Casey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what you meant to say was Councilman Casey, Councilman Santana, then Councilman Jones, just to clarify.
Yeah,
Right. But just I'm gonna kind of be all over the place here, as I was just taking some notes as we were going through. A lot of people have talked about staffing. What I would like to see is real-time staffing. All right, if we're going to be meeting every 2 weeks, I'd like to see the administration provide real see is
Councilman, you froze
bi-weekly.
for a minute, so you might need to repeat that because you froze up for a minute.
Sorry. What I would like to see, if we're going to be meeting every 2 weeks, in regards to staffing, since it seems to be such a hot topic with everybody, is real-time staffing, which is the individuals who are out there actually on the street. Included in that should be the real-time staffing of all of our specialty units, as well as our patrol. Telling us that we have 1,600 or 1,800 police officers is wonderful, but we need to know how many people we have actually working homicide, how many we actually have working sex crimes, how many are actually out patrolling, how many patrol officers have been pulled from districts because of special events that are happening. Is the city prepared for special events without pulling from the districts? So what we'd like to see, or what I'd like to see, is actual real-time staffing that's going to occur on a daily basis. The administration could tell us there's 25 people in homicide, but in reality, there's only 17 or 13 detectives because somebody's out or somebody's on sick leave or anything like that. So the real-time staffing, I think, is going to be a key. Some people have touched on the mini stations. We did a deep dive into mini stations last year. We did have a recommendation that came out of that subcommittee on mini stations. John James has all of the information on mini stations. We did take a recommendation to the administration for a compromise. We were looking to put 17 mini stations in. The administration flat out said no. So we came up with at least a mini station per district, and it kind of stopped in committee and wasn't really heard any further. But to Councilman Slife, all that information is available. It's all there. It's definitely something that we should take back up. And one of the reasons that we were told that we couldn't do mini stations is because we had a liaison to council. And that position has not been filled in probably 4 or 5 months. So we haven't, I know we have Chach, but she's the communication person for the whole city. It used to be that we would have, a liaison to Cleveland City Council, who, if something happened in, each individual ward, you'd get a text, you'd get an email, you get something real time as it was happening. So I believe that they need to look into bringing at least that liaison back. Another thing is some members have touched on this, and that is how we train police officers and then they end up leaving for other suburbs because of the pay, because of whatever. We need to look at, Mr. Chair, a policy that when we hire a police officer, they have to sign some sort of agreement to stay on the police, on the Cleveland Police Force for, we'll just say, and I don't know what the numbers are, but we'll just say for 5 years. If not, you owe us for the reimbursement of the training academy. You know, we don't charge to train police officers in our academy, and you have to be trained to go to some of the suburbs. And I believe what we're seeing is a lot of the individuals are coming through our police academy, which is a very good academy, becoming trained and then leaving. So, you know, something needs to be done where if they don't commit to the city, you know, they're going to have to reimburse us for, you know, the cost of the training, just as if they would have went through Tri-C or anywhere else. You know, a lot of people, because of the violence, like to blame the police. And, you know, sometimes that's not always the case, right? Our police officers, as when it involves crime, are reactive, right? You commit a crime, you call the police, they show up, and, you know, the story goes on from there. You know, and I understand community policing and everything. However, you know, this council and some of the individuals weren't on this, you know, when we were going through 2015 and 2016, and we were talking about, you know, bringing programs on to be a little bit more proactive on the front end of this. You know, where are the violence interrupters? You know, I want to see, you know, a report from our violence interrupters. You know, we pay over $100,000 a year to the violence interrupters who were supposed to be, you know, a part of this curtailing of the crime that's going on, as well as the other programs that the city of Cleveland has. You know, your youth violence. You know, this isn't just a police matter, right? We could put 1,000 people, you know, 1,000 police officers on the street, and, you know, sometimes that's not going to curtail crime, right? It's going to happen. But what our police officers need to do is do a better job of solving the crime afterwards, which comes to the staffing level. But the proactiveness and how are we interacting with, you know, the streets itself prior to these crimes is something that, you know, we had talked about, you know, previously with some of the programs. So we need updates on, you know, our youth prevention and intervention, you know, those departments in the city of Cleveland that are geared toward, you know, preventing the youth or preventing violence in the city as well. The chase policy, you know, we need to determine as a council, and this is probably more for law, you know, every police officer, you know, raises their hand and takes the oath to uphold, you know, the Constitution and the laws of the US and state of Ohio and the city of Cleveland. And sometimes our general police orders may not coincide with those. You know, our officers are sworn to serve and protect. And when they aren't giving that opportunity from the administration, we need to look at, you know, the fact of, are we putting our frontline police officers in a situation to determine whether they're supposed to actually do their job or be disciplined for not for doing their job. And that chase policy is an example of that. You know, the administration does a great job on telling their story on what they're not allowed to do, right? But we don't, and that helps with the criminal element or aspect of what's going on in the streets. Councilman Slate brought it up. If criminals know that our police officers are not allowed to chase, and the administration has done a yeoman's job of letting people know that, you know, there's no chasing, you know, in the city of Cleveland, is that enhancing the criminal aspect of the street? We need to take a deep dive, Mr. Chairman, into how we're telling our story of our police. You know, everybody's brought up the camera issue, right? And when we asked where the cameras are, we were told, well, we can't tell you that because it's a Homeland Security thing. And Councilman Palencia could remember that because we both looked at each other and shook our heads. You can't tell us where the cameras are because it's a Homeland Security. Well, listen, no criminal's gonna go walking down the street and, think to himself, there's Homeland Security here and we don't know. Let's tell everybody where the cameras are. Let's start covering this city with cameras, even though cameras a lot of times are great for after the fact. At least the deterrent is there, and stop with the secretness of those cameras that we have. There's it's no secret that we got basic patrol and the administration of our police department are not on the same level. And Councilwoman Spencer brought up the consent decree, right? And you have police officers who want to fight crime and do what they need to do on the streets, but then you have the administration trying to make sure everybody follows the rule of law with the consent decree. Well, congratulations, because even though the consent decree, it was a very good thing, and it has brought a lot of positive change to the Cleveland Police Department. This is the frontline patrol officers. This is what you see in not only the city of Cleveland, but in just about every city that the DOJ comes in and brings a consent decree in. I believe the consent decree was very good for the city of Cleveland. I think it has initiated a lot of change, but it's also time to move on from the consent decree as everything has been set in place, especially with Greg White being here. But that's, I'm sure, a hearing that the chairman's going to have. Something else that we need to, I think, be better at as a council is, listen, even though we all represent our own individual wards, crime affects the whole city in general, right? I mean, crime doesn't stop because somebody's crossing, West 150th, and all of a sudden they're out of Ward 16 and into Ward 17, right? Crime is affecting everybody in the city of Cleveland. And we as a council need to keep that in mind. And we need to be better at not pointing out criminal elements that do occur or don't occur in certain areas of the city. And we need to stop the ward versus ward or neighborhood versus neighborhood. This is something that if something happens in Ward 1, it affects residents in Ward 17 as well. If something happens in Ward 16, it affects the residents of Ward 2. We need to learn how to become unified as a body and fighting this criminal element that's affecting the whole city. Residents are moving out. They're not moving out of Ward 1. They're not moving out of Ward 14. They're not moving out of Ward 15. Everybody has the same theme. They're moving out of the city of Cleveland, right? So we need to learn how to tell our story better. The Cleveland Police Department needs to be better at telling their story. One of the things that we keep hearing about is we're at 200 homicides. We're at 200 homicides, and that's a fact, and we are. But how many of those are solved? Would you happen to know, Mr. Chairman?
It's around 65 right now, but that's one of the things I asked them to get back to me about.
And nobody's talking about the solve rate.
Last
Cleveland,
year was 70%. This year is hovering around 64, 65%.
and that's something that you may know, right? Because you
But
just
the rest
asked,
of the body
but you just asked the question probably 2 days ago, and they got you that answer. But we never see stories about the murders that have been solved, right? We always hear the negative with the police department. They can't do this, they can't do that, and I understand community policing, but community policing is great if you have an event in a school or whatever. But we don't see any community policing with the everyday Joe average citizen, right? That just doesn't occur. We don't see police officers, interacting with individuals on a positive basis when there's not a community event. We need to relook at our community policing and how they interact with individuals. And not only that, but their hours of operation, right? I know that ours up here in the first district are usually gone, by 2 or 3 o'clock. Well, that's nice to have them around in the morning and the mid-afternoon hours, but most people are working at that time. So community policing needs to be done, in the late afternoon and the evening hours if you want to get the biggest impact of interacting with the residents. I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman. I've been on this committee for 6 years, and I could go on and on. But my blood just boils when we talk about mini stations and the consent decree. But those are the two things that I think we really need to delve into. We know that the consent decree has been extended for 2 years. So, they're going to be around for at least 2021 and 22. Judge Oliver will decide after that if it needs to go any longer. But when you look at the police department, you're basically looking at your regular patrol versus the administration. And, I think the administration needs to, have the back of our patrol officers. And I believe that our police officers need to start being able to be police officers without fear of reprimand from the administration, all the while keeping in mind, everybody has, constitutional rights which should not be violated. But I believe our police officers need to become a little bit more proactive and a little bit stronger on the streets and start sending a message to the criminals that crime won't be tolerated, all the while sending the same message to those who are non-criminals that, you're going to be safe in the city of Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman Casey. And before I go to Councilwoman Santana and Councilman Jones, I see that Councilman Kevin Bishop has joined us. And Councilman Bishop, just to let you know, this is a hearing. What we're doing is really trying to get a sense of what everybody would like to hear and see out of the administration in 2021. So we're giving every council member an opportunity to really kind of air what they would like to see this committee accomplish in 2021, just to give you some background on what we're trying to do. The administration is scheduled to come on in about 15 to 20 minutes, but they will have to wait until I hear from all the council people. So I have Councilman Santana, and then Councilman Jones had a follow-up, and then I see Councilman Brancatelli and Councilman Bishop, if you guys wanted to add in anything, and then we'll go to the administration side. Councilman Santana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to thank you. Congratulations on your appointment, but thank you for taking action and putting together this retreat before 2021. We all know that safety is a huge concern in our city, and so I won't repeat most of what has been shared today by my colleagues. They're all right on the now. I'll tell you, for me as a council person, I love the city, I love this ward, but even sometimes I question, do I want to run again because of the safety of our neighborhood? And my kids are traumatized. They don't even want to walk to the corner store. So once again, I just want to thank you for your leadership with this, safety committee. Some possible solutions I want them to be considered for 2021 is definitely, and my council colleagues have touched on this, data analysis, very important to determine maybe hotspots and, have concentrated police districts. So that's one. Cameras. We definitely need more cameras in our city. I'm interested in maybe implementing a program that assists businesses or residents to get cameras. Residents are interested, businesses are interested. They could be fairly pricey. So, how can the city help with, maybe an incentive or a voucher or some type of discount, to acquire these cameras. And we all know that police find criminals, a lot because of video cameras. So very important to include that in the 2021 plan. I remember growing up with a curfew, and I remember my mom just always screaming outside the window, before that 10 o'clock hit, because she was so scared about us getting caught by the police, because she couldn't afford these tickets, right? So, can we revisit the curfew enforcement? That doesn't happen anymore. Unfortunately and sadly, most of our crime is being done by youth, right? And so, can we revisit the curfew enforcement? Along the lines with the youth programs, I get a lot of youth asking for jobs. I remember there was tons of programs, that gave access to youth for, like mentorship and support and working while they got their education. Can we revisit that? I know we have the Mayor's Recreation Youth Initiative. I know this year, a lot of those programs weren't able to take place because of the pandemic, but can we visit these youth programs next year? Are we doing enough to support organizations that are working with youth? CMSD, what are they doing? What is their curriculum with around safety and trauma? I think it's time for us to bring CMSD to the table. I don't think we've ever had a meeting with CMSD at the table. And education is key, it's important. So I would like to see CMSD at the table next year. And then definitely improve relationships between police and residents. There's great models out there. Let's analyze these models and improve that relationship between police and residents. One of the things that I do agree with Councilman Casey is, right now there's no respect for police. There's none, and so it's hard for them to do their jobs. So let's revisit that, and let's help. And I know that council can't do everything, right? But we definitely have the relationships that we could work with to create these models and to improve these relationships. Another thing is speed bumps. The speeding is out of control. My car has been hit twice just in the last couple of month, and I live right down the street from 2nd District. So, we've thrown this out there, we've had this conversation, but can we really implement some speed bumps around, the city? One of the things I'm excited as far as understaffing, I'm working with a pilot program with the Hispanic police officers to create a pipeline from Puerto Rico to recruit Latino officers. And so increase diversity among the police. And, it also helps increase population. So I just kind of want to invite, if any of my colleagues are interested in, helping with this pipeline program, I invite you to just join me. And I will definitely send out information to all the colleagues. And once again, if you're interested in that program, just let me know. Let me see, what else do I have? There's so much, right? And then I know, and my colleagues have already touched on all of this, but this is just exciting. I love everything about retreats because it's all about solution. Ensuring graduates are staying here in the job. I mean, I'm hearing that, while even these students are in class, they're already planning and applying for jobs outside of our city. So we definitely have to, work on a law to make sure that they stay here. And last but not least, I'm just curious to know, have we looked at other city models, that we could adopt in the city regarding, to tackle safety? So, and I'm not sure if you know that, Councilman, have we looked at other models? I mean, considering that safety is just a huge concern in our city.
And to answer your question, Councilwoman, first of all, thank you so much. You gave some great ideas. And I think that to our listening public, that's why we're all crazy about you, because it's really, great ideas and really kitchen table ideas that you really brought forth today. I'm not sure recently, I know in the previous position that I held, we looked at Boston, we looked at a couple of other places that dramatically reduced their homicide rate. And, those were in the early 2000s, but they turned out to be pretty effective. And ironically, as when you mentioned about jobs and summer employment, the lowest level that we had was in 2012 when we had 72 homicides, which was its lowest in years. And a lot of that was due to, if a lot of people remember, then President Obama put stimulus dollars to make sure that we hired young people. So every young person that wanted a job in Cleveland, we were able to employ that year. And I think it had a dramatic effect. At least YOU just did a report that actually shows how a summer employment experience, a job, actually does help with reducing the crime rate. So great idea. I wanted to just recap a couple of things that Casey said and you said. Casey brought up staffing, real-time staffing, making sure that we have that, specialty units versus patrol. How many patrol officers are pulled off the streets because of special events? Casey said that there's a mini station report that John James has where a recommendation was made to the administration to have one per district. Once again, we need to know why. Councilman Casey also mentioned that we need to have a liaison to council. This was one of the reasons we were told we couldn't get a mini station. So we either need that liaison back and or the mini stations. And I would tend to say and more than or. But really there's a need that people want to see many stations. How do we train police officers and make sure that we give a 5-year commitment or so, or a certain period of time that they would be required to stay on the force so that we don't train them and they leave? The chase policy is near and dear to Councilman Casey. We need to get the facts on the chase policy. How are the chase policies conducted? And I believe we're going to really do a deep dive in that so that people could have a thorough understanding of what the chase policy actually is and how it's conducted. Where are all the cameras, which is a recurring thing that everybody continues to say. The consent decree, which I think is a great question that Councilman Casey asked, has it worked or has it decreased morale? I believe that the discipline matrix has a lot to do with morale in the police department. At least from a lot of people tell me they're getting dinged for things that used to be subjective. Now they're just being dinged for things that, that are strict adherence to the discipline matrix. So we need to understand what kind of flexibility that discipline matrix has. But it's my understanding that that's in place so that it makes it stand up to the arbitrator a lot better. But we'll get an understanding of that, okay? Casey brought up a great point, which is one of the reasons we're doing this today, is that we need to get out of this, my neighborhood, your neighborhood, that as we speak about crime in the city of Cleveland, we speak about it as a body. That's part of the exercise that I'm trying to get us to do today, is that Joe Jones' problems are my problems. Mike Polensik's problems are my problems. So as I assume this role of chair, you can rest assured when you have that frustration, I share your frustration, and I'm going to make sure we advocate with the administration to get results and deal with your issues, okay? Jasmine Santana, she brought up the need for cameras, more cameras in the city, maybe even acquire a camera. Like there's a program that they're experimenting with Akron, and I'm looking at here to possibly bring Ring cameras for nominal cost to residents. But there is a cost and you do have to have connectivity. So those are some things we need to think through. Revisit curfew enforcement is huge. I think that I haven't heard that in about maybe 8 years, but that is a great suggestion, Councilwoman Santana, that we need to reinstigate curfew sweeps. There was a guy named Pat Purdy who used to be a district rep in the 4th district. And he used to get together with all of the 4th district officers and they conducted them regularly when I first came on in late 2006 and all the way through to about 2010. I remember those curfew sweeps, and Brancatelli could probably remember, but they used to do those regularly. And we need to maybe reinstitute that. I think that's a great idea. Youth programming and jobs, I think that's critical. And I'll talk with Councilman Bishop because I know that we've had meetings with YOU and maybe we need to really talk with them about setting aside more jobs for us. CMSD, bringing them to the table. I think that is critical, and we will, even though we don't have oversight, but I think it's within our purview to make sure we bring their security teams to the table because they really sniff out stuff early. Data. I'm a huge fan of data. Improve relationship between the police and residents. Councilwoman Santana also recommended that we have speed bumps because traffic is really out of control. I think we all agree with that. the diversity pipeline, increasing diversity pipeline for Hispanic, specifically Hispanic officers. I think that is great. And other models, which keeps coming up, and I mentioned this to John James earlier, other models of other cities that they use to tackle safety. And we'll look at some other cities and maybe talk to the police department too to see what other models they have. Councilman Casey and Councilwoman Santana, did we capture your thoughts?
Yes, good job. So once again, just thank you for convening this meeting. You know, I am a huge believer in the Bible says, where there's no vision, people perish. So you're taking the right approach. Thank you for your leadership.
Well, we're going to work together. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm competitive, and I want this to be the best safety committee that we've ever had. So
Yeah.
that means I got to listen to Grumpy Polensik every other day, then that's what I'm going to do. Councilman Jones, you had a follow-up.
And maybe you'll take some of his advice. That's what would work well. Okay. We'll do you well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, certainly, thank you for, convening this, this morning. And, you know, I just following up with some of the stuff that was said earlier, because I didn't know that there were outside audits that were done. So can we request the last 10 years of all the audit reports for the Cleveland Police Department, whether those were internal audits as well as outside audits, so that we can begin the process to review that? I think that's important, and that's a great place to start. And I would like to see something you could write down, at least in our district, the 4th district, anywhere between 6 to 8 cars dedicated to traffic enforcement. And the patrol units that are actually being assigned to the various different wards, that those actual patrol units stay in their actual patrol area and not leave that patrol area. I think that's going to be significant and keeping our community safe. So I just wanted to make sure we have that added on there. And then I just want to share with you something that was significant. And this is, you know, I get this often, you know, I know some of my colleagues, you know, I'm not trying to say one side or the other side, but this summer I met with one of my colleagues downtown, actually near West Side, and I think it was over on West 25th Street. And we went over there for a cup of coffee, and I saw all of the people walking their dogs, you know, riding their bicycles, a nice park area. I mean, I'm telling you, it was really nice. It was great to see the development that's going on in the city of Cleveland, and that there were places where it was just, you thought you were in another city almost. And right across was a nice latte, tea shop, coffee shop. And then right across from that was a really nice, beautiful sit down sports kind of bar. And then right around the corner from there was like a bicycle shop. It was really beautiful. It was like looking at paradise in a sense. And everybody was just cool, calm, collected, relaxed. It was a nice setting in the city of Cleveland. And then I thought for a second, as you know, after I left, and I said, I would love to have one place like that, just one place like that on all of the east side. I can't find one place like that on the entire east side of the city of Cleveland. So some of us want to live in this world, this bubble, where, you know, we don't see the reality. I see it every day. When I told you I'm afraid of driving my car down the neighborhood and hoping not to get shot, that's a real reality. The 4th district, and you know this because your neighborhood is in the 4th district, is the most violent 4th district, is the violent district in all of the city of Cleveland. If we, just in my neighborhood alone, if Bay Village, Westlake, Rocky River, Fairview Park, Lakewood, if we look at Parma, Seven Hills, we swing over to the east side, we look at Chagrin Falls, we look at any of those neighborhoods, Shaker Heights, Bracknell, if they were having anywhere near the kind of crime that we're having in the 4th district, it'd be a state of an emergency. So what I'm saying to you, Mr. Chairman, this issue is serious. Some parts of the city of Cleveland are more impacted than others. And we need to make the priorities of putting our resources in play to make sure that we make sure our citizens, all not just only in Ward 1 and in the 4th District, but all over the entire city of Cleveland safe. So I just want to make sure that my colleagues heard that all of the city needs to be safe, because if they're getting carjacked over on the west side of town where you're building $250,000, 300, 400, I think that the top pricing listing is $500,000 homes in those neighborhoods. Those people who are paying $500,000 for those homes, they don't want to get carjacked. So safety is a priority all over the city of Cleveland. What I express to you guys is the fact that I represent, in particular, Ward 1. I care about all of the city of Cleveland, and I bleed the colors of the city of Cleveland in my veins. And so I want all of the city of Cleveland to be safe for all of its citizens, not just in one section or the other, but for all. But right now, we have a lot of bloodletting going on in the 4th District, and it needs to be stopped. We need to stop the blood from flowing out of the veins. And if we don't do this, if we don't draw, Mr. Chairman, the line in the sand that this is our city, and we don't reclaim it with our department, we're in trouble. We spent over $250 million on our police department. There's nowhere in the means that we should not be getting the kind of services that we deserve to have. We spend more than any other department in the entire region. So we need to be able to get those services. We need to feel the impact of those services. And we need to, quite frankly, start feeling the impact now. And I do like one of my colleagues, Jasmine Santana's comments as relates to diversity. When we look at our police department right now, it is not diverse. It does not represent the entire makeup of the city of Cleveland. So we should be looking at ways and means to improve our diversity in our departments. I think that will also help to make a difference. It's one of the reasons why we have the dissent decree that's in place right now, as my colleague KZ brought up. In order to lift that, you have to get diversity in the department. It doesn't make sense that we have been going for the last 20, 30, 40 some years and our diversity and our basic departments are not better than what they are. I don't know why it's that way, but I do look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, with this council, as well as with the mayor. As we have a diverse council, we also should have diverse bodies in terms of our police department and our fire departments. Right now, 60% of the police department are white males. Another 20% is white females, and then the rest is others. And so we certainly have an issue here. It's been this way for a while, and we need to have some diversity, and it's only fair. And then I agree with my colleague. You know, we should look at ways and means in our programs to promote police officers who live in the city of Cleveland. I think that's important. We want to get back to that because we had that during Mike Polensik's tenure. I know that there was a lot of politics involved with that. And then we have to, also, Mr. Chairman, once we get everything stabilized and running in the right way, in the right course, and it's keeping our citizens safe, then we have to have systems in place to maintain that. So long after this council has set the foundation of safety and security for this city, then we need to have those foundations that are in place that are always doing what it needs to do to keep our city safe. And I think, Mr. Chairman, we need to enact new laws. And so I would like to work with you, Mr. Chairman, on a number of those ideals that I have that I think that are going to be appropriate and important for keeping our city safe. And then I think that the bottom line is we need to do what we need to do as legislators, enact the laws necessary to protect our citizens. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. And just for the record, I know that Councilman Bashir Jones has an excused absence today, but Councilman Bashir Jones definitely has brought up hiring and diversity on the police force. And then also he's very interested in no-knock warrants, which is part of that 8 can't wait, national movement. That is no-knock warrants as part of that. And many of you know that the case made infamous by no-knock warrants has been the Breonna Taylor case down in Louisville. I believe that we already have some level of no-knock warrants, but there's still some ambiguity around it. So I know that we're going to be talking through that as well, just so that everybody understands, okay? As we wait for the police to come on, and as we wait, nobody mentioned fire or EMS a lot. I will try to capture that in a quick segment that we'll have, even though the fire and EMS folks will be on this call with us in a couple of minutes. If you have specific questions about fire or EMS, I'd like for you to get them to Ann Tilly, or if you have questions about the kennel, because we know animal control is a very tough issue as well. Make sure you get those to Ann Tilly so that we can have a robust agenda. My whole goal is to capture what you guys talked about today and make sure that we have measurable results so that you can actually get answers to the questions that you are bringing up to us today. Now, some stuff is going to be real time and some things are going to be on a schedule that we cannot control. But for the most part, when we have an agenda, this will be your agenda. These will be items that you said are important, that you want to hear from. That's the reason why we wanted to have this session. So just wanted to give you that heads up, and so that you all can understand what we're trying to accomplish here. Once again, we'll be joined by the administration in a moment. I just have one ask of everybody before we go into this with the administration. I'm really going to be a stickler about the 15-minute rule, because in order for us to really get something accomplished, we need to make sure everybody has a voice at the table, and we cannot have one or two people that take up all the time. It's out of respect. It is not out of disrespect. I'm asking everyone as we move forward next year, in order to have a disciplined committee that we get work done, please adhere to the 15-minute rule. If you want to come back after the 15 minutes, then I will work with you. Many of you that have been on committees that I've chaired before know that I try to show a lot of deference because you represent the community. So I never try to stifle your voice, but I do want to make sure that we have decorum. I will not tolerate anybody attacking you. So if anybody from the administration is disrespectful to you, I will intervene promptly and make sure that they recognize you as a duly elected official. But I also ask for the same level of respect for the administration, because at the end of the day, I plan on pushing them very hard to really try to get results around safety. And the best way to do that, as Mike Polensek said earlier, is for them to recognize that we are co-equal branch of government. And I will make sure that we push, but I also won't allow this to come into just a sideshow. And in order for us to be considered serious, I want us to make sure we have all those issues. Councilman Jones, you asked for some documentation that we'll make sure you get, and that's any assessment that has been done from the police department regarding PERF or anybody else that is an independent assessment, or if there has been internal assessments, and we'll get any reports that those state as well, okay?
And Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, that's for the last 10 years.
We'll work for the last 10 years to see if there's anything, any of those reports for the last 10 years. And as a matter of fact, we'll ask that today when we have the police brass on the table. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your refreshment, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you being the chairman of the Safety Committee.
Thank you, Councilman, and we're going to work on results. Before the administration comes in, Councilman Bishop or Brancatelli, did you have anything you wanted to add before the administration comes in?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Bishop.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank. I want to congratulate you on your appointment to the chairmanship of the Safety Committee. We wish you lots of success. And what everybody else has said. What's important is that we stay on the administration and actually get them to respond to us in a serious manner. Like Councilman Polensek said, we have to let them know that we are an equal branch of government, and our concerns is very valid to the overall health of the city. Because a lot of folks are scared here in our community. But traffic is a big issue. I think we have to get tougher, a lot tougher on traffic, because it is getting totally out of control. And our cameras, just like everybody mentioned, The cameras are great, but if we don't have access to them and we cannot tap into the benefits of the camera, it doesn't do us any good. So I just want to reiterate everybody's sentiments. I think we're on the right track. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Bishop. Appreciate it. So we'll make sure that we focus on the camera issue. Just while the administration is coming on, once again, the question around cameras is a technical question that I think we need to really ask of Larry Jones III, because it's my understanding that the reason that the cameras are attached to recreation centers is because it needed a city infrastructure in order for the cameras to operate. Now, the concern I have about that is that all of these LED lights were supposed to be compatible enough to be able to host these cameras too. And I have not seen or heard if these cameras have been moved towards LED lights and that we're only confined to dealing with the structure. I also heard in my passing conversations and listening to the administration in the past that there's supposed to be more cameras this year. And if there are, then we need to ask, are there more cameras? And are those cameras, we gave locations, because I gave locations too. Are those cameras going up in the locations that we requested? And really get a finalized answer that may be a little bit better than, oh, we can't let anybody know because it's Homeland Security. But really just to get an understanding on where those, how those cameras are going to be placed. So we'll follow up and we'll have that conversation too, okay? I'm gonna give everybody a couple of minutes while I clue in Director Howard and his team. And if everybody could just be on standby, I'm gonna give them a call so that they can come on in. Thank you. And Councilman Polinsik, by virtue of being vice chair, I always give you the first question, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
1 second, Mike. Once I get this administration up, you up first.
I can't hear anything.
All right, Director Howard.
Yeah, hey, sorry, Councilman, we were having some technical issues.
No problem.
Hold on. You can give me one moment, Councilman.
Sure. So I think we got Director Howard and Chief Williams. Director, is anybody else going to be joining you?
Can you hear me?
Chief Williams and anybody else?
I have to text Carlton's cell phone to my personal phone. Councilman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can't hear you.
So, yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Chief Williams, you can hear us, can't you? All right.
I can't hear you all.
I wouldn't. Yeah, he might want to come out and come back in. Have him come out and come back in.
Okay,
All right. Can you hear us, Director?
I can hear you much better now.
All right. Just FYI, you're sideways.
Uh,
There you go.
Okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
All right. Will the fire chief or EMF chiefs be joining us as well?
They're in meetings about the vaccine distribution with Department of Health.
That's fine. Let them handle that. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So Director in Chief, thank you so much for joining us. This is a hearing of public health. I mean, I'm sorry, a hearing of public safety. And this are members of the safety committee as well as other members of Cleveland City Council. We're in the process of really doing fact finding and also trying to make sure we understand what documents we need so that we can effectively deliberate in 2021. We also have heard from our members about what are some of the priority issues. Ironically, most of them pertain to the police department, but I would just give you a couple of them. Traffic has continued to be recurring. Issues around safety, really having a game plan around safety, especially the homicides that we have, understanding the homicide rate, understanding technology, the hiring and diversity of the forces. That includes police, fire, and EMS. And comparing to other police departments to really try to make sure that we have an understanding of what our best practices. And one of the things, Chief Williams, that a couple of the members would like are any assessments that have done, like the PERF report that you have done in the past, or any other report done in the last 10 years regarding assessments of the staffing and others regarding the police department. So with that being said, once again, this is really just us trying to set the agenda for what we'd like to see in upcoming 2021. And then once we leave here, Ann Tilly will work with myself, and then we'll meet with Director Howard and we'll establish an agenda for the entire 2021 year, which will include dates that we need to hear specific legislation. So that being said, Director Howard, I don't know if you have any opening remarks, you or Chief Williams. And once we do, then I'll kick it to Mike Polensek, Vice Chair of the Public Safety Committee, and then I'll take questions in due order. And once again, this is really setting the stage of information we like to have and questions that we'd like to have answered for the upcoming 2021 year, so that when we get to the table, it's no, we'll get back to you. It's no, we'll look into it. These are things that we want to have up front so that we can effectively deliberate as we move forward. Any questions, Director or Chief or anybody?
No questions from me.
Great. All right. So I know I mentioned a couple of things, but once again, my colleagues may reiterate a couple of things. So Dean of City Council, Mike Polensek, has the floor first. Once again, everybody would adhere to the 15-minute rule. If they can keep their remarks shorter, then they will. But that's the rule that we have for this hearing. Councilman Mike Polensek, you had the floor. Then I'll wait for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But before I say anything or speak or take up any time, doesn't the safety director or chief have anything to say? I'm assuming they were watching our
Director or
discussion.
Chief, do you have any comments you want to give or?
Yeah, I thank you, Chair and Council. First, I want to say congratulations on becoming safety chair, Councilman Griffin. We look forward to working with you. Also want to add that, that, as we go into 2021, I've been safety director since June. It had extensive conversations and discussions about the direction of public safety with Chief Williams, Chief Cavillo, and Commissioner Carlton, calling Sedelki of animal control. We are doing a complete evaluation of how we've been serving the city, how we can better serve the city. Our priority is to provide quality, competent, and effective service to the citizens of Cleveland. We have had a very interesting year, unprecedented with the pandemic, with civil unrest, staffing, and we have taken a hard look at ourselves and are working to continue to steer the ship and make changes while we move along and provide the services to the citizens of Cleveland. And I assure council and the citizens that safety is a priority. So and we welcome this opportunity to speak with council.
Thank you, Director Howard. Appreciate it. Councilman Polinsky?
Does the chief have anything?
Chief?
Would the chief care to comment as well before I say anything?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, to the committee. Just briefly, I apologize. I didn't watch the council hearing before this. We're in another meeting. But I do know the concerns of council. I know the concerns of the residents here in the city. And as the director stated, we've been in a process of evaluation of everything that we do, whether it's community engagement, whether it's investigation of violent crime, whether it's personnel, staffing, recruitment, from top to bottom. And we're always in that process, and we're always trying to better how we do those things. So with that said, I just welcome the council's questions on things that pertain to police. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman Polinsky? You need to unmute yourself, Councilman.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, to the director and to the chief. Obviously, the council collectively, on behalf of the citizens of the city of Cleveland, and I'm going to put my my timer on here, Mr. Chairman, so I want to coincide with your request that we play by the rules here. So I'm setting it, okay. That greatly concerned about the growing violence, lawlessness in our city. As I indicated earlier in our discussion, from my historical perspective, in my 11 consecutive terms here, I've never seen a level of violence, just the indiscriminate violence that we have seen this past year. Never witnessed it before, never the level of homicides. We are approaching, again, a record number of homicides this year. Figure I saw yesterday in Cleveland.com was 180 homicides. When we realize the city of Cleveland is around 50th in population in the country, and now we are having the distinction of having, I'm told, of having the highest per capita. We have a higher per capita homicide rate, to the director and to the chief, than LA, Chicago, and New York. If that is not troubling, and I don't know what is, but it's just the level of that we've experienced. Just people sitting in their homes, kids walking down the street or sitting in a car, being hit by stray bullets. The lawlessness that, like many of us believe, the criminal element has taken advantage of the COVID-19 situation. They believe they're not going to be arrested, and if they are arrested, are going to be released. They also believe that the police are not going to engage them as they once were, due to ongoing issues with police and public safety, not only here, but nationally. So as a person told me, in fact, someone who has done time, former gang member told me recently, it's the perfect storm for criminals. They believe it's a unique opportunity for them. And so we see more gang activity, more violence, more mayhem, more chaos in our neighborhoods. And what I'm asking, again, not only as a citizen of the city of Cleveland, but as the senior member of this body, I'm looking for a game plan. And I really haven't heard a game plan or seen a game plan coming out of the command staff or the administration. And as I said earlier, and I'm going to be very blunt as I always am, my confidence level in the command staff has been greatly shaken. Because of what I've experienced. I talk with people on a regular basis in the 5th district, and I have a wonderful working relationship with my commander, very good commander. But I talk to the rank and file, and what do I hear from them? Councilman, we don't have enough people. We can't patrol the streets as we once did. We're basically responding to calls for service. Then I look at the levels in the homicide unit, the staffing levels there, staffing levels in sex crimes, in domestic violence, in traffic enforcement. Former chief of police, Rocco Paluccio, said to me during the summer when I saw him up in Little Italy at an event, he said, policing starts with traffic enforcement. He said, why don't you speed in some suburbs? Because in many suburbs, because of traffic enforcement. Why are their crime rates so much lower? Because they start with traffic enforcement. We don't see the traffic enforcement in the city of Cleveland. We're all seeing it. Look at the level of speeding and accidents, hit and runs, which, my goodness, look at the number of hit and run accidents in the city of Cleveland. So I'm looking at policing. We know that the former safety director, and I'm going to be very blunt to the new director, Howard, and I wish him well, as I've indicated to him, the former safety director did not support the mini station program, the creation of a mini station program. And yet, as a member of this body, then as majority whip, and then as chairman of the Public Safety Committee, I worked with the White administration, the mayor, the chief of police at that time, Ed Kovacic, and we put together the mini station program. And there was one officer assigned per ward, and then it was through the safety committee. We worked with Chief Kovacic to create 2 officers per ward. That program worked exceptionally well. We built rapport with our citizens. We were in the schools. We had that real dialogue that I thought we needed to have in the city. And then it went under the Campbell administration. The mini station programs went south. So I'm greatly concerned as to the level of policing in our neighborhoods, how people are looking upon the police. They don't feel safe in our neighborhoods. When I have elderly women tell me they're afraid to walk down the street, or they're buying guns because of they're afraid. In 2020, it's inconceivable to me that people feel that they have to purchase a gun or carry a gun to be safe in the city of Cleveland. I'm distressed talking to parents who've lost children or who have been victimized, family members have been victimized by violent crime. And I've always maintained this, that the council and the administration is not one of an adversarial role. We might disagree, we might have different opinions at times, but we're here to work together. And I'm extremely frustrated at this point of my career here at City Hall that I don't believe the council is being listened to. I don't believe that the concerns of our residents are being heard. People are talking with their feet. They're moving out of the city of Cleveland. We've seen that with the census, and we're going to see it with the census results when they come in officially. I'm trying to maintain a neighborhood. I'm trying to keep people in my community. I'm trying to have people believe. I'm a believer in Cleveland. I've never lived any place else. I grew up on the east side. I've never lived any place else. Born in Glenville neighborhood, raised in Collinwood. I'm a believer in Cleveland. But I see people's, they're being shaken. They're questioning whether they should stay. We see businesses that have to behind 2 inches of plexiglass to operate, or they have to carry 9mm on their hips in their stores or shops. I mean, that's something that I would think out of the Middle East. you'd have to operate a business, not in the city of Cleveland in 2020. So I'm looking, as I've said this respectfully through the chair, I'm looking to the administration as we go into the budget hearings for a real game plan to be presented to us and a real understanding of how many men and women you need in this department, unlike what you did to us this year with the budget hearings, when you told us you had enough people, and we know now that you didn't. And you look at the number of people who left the ranks, and we are in a terrible situation due to the number of people that left. And I don't care, any business worth its salt knows how many people you need. That's a given. I don't care if it's a McDonald's restaurant. You know how many people you need to operate. So we need to have an honest assessment of where we're at staffing level wise, what you need. You've said that there's going to be 3 classes. I don't know if the 3 classes are enough based on what you lost this year alone, this year numbers. But we need honest assessments. We need honest figures. The homicide numbers you give us are different than what the county medical examiner says has taken place in the city of Cleveland. Why is that? Why are our numbers different than the County medical examiner as it pertains to homicide rate in the city of Cleveland? We need honest figures, Mr. Chairman. We need direct figures. We need to have a real assessment of where this department is, not only at the end of this year, but going into 2021. My colleagues are concerned. Our citizens are concerned. I listen to my people every day. And what I hear is not good. They're questioning the direction of this city. They're questioning our priorities. They're questioning, there's like a lack of there's like a silence coming out of the city and the administration as it pertains to this growing problem. For somehow, if we don't say anything, we don't discuss it, somehow it's going to go away. It's not going away. People are greatly concerned, and so I'm gonna stop right there because I'm still within my time. But I want to hear some kind of response from the director. I want to hear some response from the chief. You know, we are at a point. We are at the Rubicon here. We are at a crossroads in this city.
So, Councilman, as we hear from the director and the chief, just to let you know, you're at 10 minutes. So
I know I've got my timer. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that they.
And I'm going to adhere to my time. Thank you.
Okay, I got you. Director and chief to Councilman comments. I think he made about 4 or 5 points.
So if I can start, I want to make it very clear that we mourn every alert, every homicide that comes across our phone, every alert that we get with regard to the loss of a child. This is something that's very, very important to us, and we're not silent on it. We're not silent on it. We have had conferences. The mayor has held several conferences. We have had meetings here. We have some of the things that we have implemented and continue to evaluate is we're working to engage in the community in a COVID world. We need to engage with the community. Our homicide unit, our sexual assault unit, they investigate crimes after they occur. We are working on through our intelligence unit and working with our law enforcement partners to consistently and constantly gather information with what's going on in the city so that we can address these violent crimes. We have done targeted and increased police presence in communities. We have been very responsive to when council calls about an issue in the community. We give focus on that issue. We have had some successes. We have provided targeted traffic enforcement. And a lot of that targeting traffic enforcement comes from listening to members of council. It comes from listening to citizens in the community that advise us as to what's going on their street, which is extremely helpful. We said it before that a lot of the issues that plague or that affect the city, we it requires a partnership between the community, and it requires effective policing. It requires proper staffing and allocation of resources. And we are always evaluating that and allocating resources accordingly. So these are, the citizens need to know that our law enforcement officers are very hardworking and very diligent in the services that they provide to the city, and we are out there. Chief.
I'm sorry, I had to get off mute there. The director hit some of the main points. Our staffing is down. A lot of it's based on COVID. And even within just not having the numbers in the division, it's the availability of officers due to COVID. In the initial stages of COVID, back in April and May, we weren't hit that bad. We averaged, 2 or 3 guys every couple of weeks. The last couple of weeks, we've had upwards of 160 officers out with COVID in this division, and sometimes more than that, but around that average. So going from 2 or 3 a week, maybe 8, 10 a month, to a couple of weeks when we had over 150, 160, it takes a big hit with our staffing and deployment in the division. And, that's not to make an excuse, but that's just the reality of what's going on, not just here, but around the country. As it relates to our staffing, we're about 70 officers down from our budgeted staffing number of 1640. We've been working to get that number up. And I know that Councilman Polensek mentioned the 3 classes that are budgeted for 2021. We had the same thing budgeted for 2020. Right now, 2 of those classes graduated. We had 144 officers that were actually hired in 2020. That includes 37 that are currently in our academy right now. We graduated those 2 classes. That 3rd class started beginning in November. They'll graduate sometime in early spring. But it's always a numbers game as it relates to cadet classes, the time it takes to onboard those classes. And then the academy has grown by things that we've implemented in our training and things that have been mandated by the state, by OPATA. So now a cadet class that used to be maybe 5.5 to 6 months is over 7 months now from start to finish. So we used to be able to crank classes out a lot more efficiently, but with the increased demands on what officers need to be trained on, that increases the time that they're actually in the academy, which is less time that they're on the streets here in the city of Cleveland. Our recruitment efforts, I think, have been stellar. We've recruited at 50% minority in quite a few classes, probably about over the last at least 5 or 6 classes that I can kind of take a look at the numbers for. Our recruitment efforts have been 50% for those classes. The graduation rate has been what it should be. We usually lose about 10% on average of each cadet class that goes in for various reasons. And that's just the way the game is in public safety. But our recruitment folks have done a great job in getting folks to sign up for the tests. We have a test that we're evaluating currently. The testing period ended this past Friday, and we had almost 800 folks that actually signed up for, but only about a little over 600 folks actually took that test. So we'll go through those 600 through the evaluation process, through interviews, background checks, physical agility checks, you name it. Their physical exams, their psych exams, and then we'll go through the selection process of those 600, and hopefully we'll get 2 classes out of that. Usually when we give a test here in the city of Cleveland, we get those numbers anywhere from 400 to 800 folks that sign up and then take the test. Of course, that number is a little lower, but we exhaust the entire list with our cadet classes. We don't leave any viable candidates on the board out there because we've been cranking out academy classes at that rate. Of course, here in 2020, that rate slowed down a little. We had about 4 or 5 months when we had an academy class actually in session with Tri-C that was sent home. because Tri-C closed down for a couple months because of COVID. So those folks basically did a lot of distance learning things, and we tried to make sure they stayed engaged so that they can finish that class, and that class graduated here a couple months ago. But, I think the councilman also mentioned, folks are saying this is kind of the perfect storm for all things not so good, not just here in the city, but around the country. The same things we're experiencing here, and I don't like to really compare us to other places, but in this situation, it's the same thing that's happening all over the country in major jurisdictions, period. Elevated homicide rates, elevated violent crime rates, the workforce that's dwindling, because folks either don't want to be in law enforcement anymore because of all things that are happening around the country, or because of their health due to COVID, or because folks are just aging out. And, it's kind of held a lot of places up and actually hiring and recruiting because of COVID, because of the restrictions that are put on social distancing for testing and evaluation processes and things like that. So, the things that we're talking about here today, of course, I'm definitely keen on what's happening in Cleveland, but all those items are not unique to the city of Cleveland. It's sad to say, it's happening nationwide.
Chief, before I go to Councilman Polensek for final remarks, one of the things this committee is going to do is really focus on data. Can you give us the numbers that justify what you just talked about, where you are 70 officers down from 1640, 3 classes with 144 officers hired in 2020 and 37 that are there now? You said that 50% of the classes are minority now, which includes female, Hispanic, and African American. Can you give us the actual data for that? We want to actually see that, because one of the things I want to prepare this committee for is that we have this data. Councilman Casey actually asked earlier if we could have it real time, like when you guys get it each month, or if you guys get it every quarter. We want to make sure we get the data regularly so that we can compare these numbers. Do you have that, sir?
Yes, I can get you that data. The only caveat, Councilman, or I'm sorry, Chair of the committee, is that, say, for example, the data on the cadet classes that are coming in. That data comes in when that class is actually seated. So it's not something that we get every week or every month or every quarter. We get it in relationship to when we actually seat that class.
That's fine.
We can forward that data, or we can actually give you, either from us or from civil service, here's a breakdown of the demographics of the actual testing, the folks that actually took the test, what that demographic looks like. And then once we root through that and actually get to final numbers as far as folks that we're actually going to seat in the academy, we can send you that demographic breakdown. But again, it's not a thing that goes on. It's cycled with the actual classes. So it may be twice in a year, it may be 3 times in a year. It depends on how we're seating actual classes. But yes, we have that data.
If you could send that to Ann Tilly and myself, that'd be great. Councilman Polensek, you had the floor. Would that suffice for you?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Councilman. You broke up again. Come back on, Councilman. Come back
Can
on.
you hear me?
Here you go. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, my time is up, but I just want to say this to the chief. The 160 officers that are out with COVID-19, it's the first, here it is, December 16th, it's the first we've been told that. First we've been told that. No reporting to us, no indication, no nothing. So, we hear it today for the first time. Then secondly, the chief indicated that they've hired 144 officers in 2020. Chief, how many officers did you lose in 2020?
We lost, through the chair to the councilman, we lost 149 officers so far in 2020.
Okay. Again, we're not even breaking even here. So my questioning is over, and I'll wait for my other colleagues if I need to go back on, but I appreciate the information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Chairman, if I could kind of respond to the councilman's question a little further. We base our classes on the anticipated attrition from the division, as well as a goal of trying to get a little bit above our staffing so that as officers drop off, then we backfill with that staffing through the academy. You can never plan for each and every officer that's going to leave the division because there's no way for us to know. Officers aren't required to tell us in advance of when they're leaving. And even if they did, say, for example, an officer says, I'm going to leave in 3 months. That's great knowledge for us to have. But again, it takes us almost 9 months to actually seat an academy class. So even if we have that information, from the time we give testing to the time we actually go through all the stuff that actually picks an academy group to seat that group, and then 7 months to actually graduate them, we're still behind the 8 ball. So we can't plan for and go 100 over our budgeted number because the city can't sustain that. We'd love to do that, but the city can't sustain that. So we plan for what we think attrition is going to be. And we look at, can we get a little bump and a little increase in that of maybe about, say, 10% or so. And then we try with our recruitment, with our academy classes to get that. We currently have permission. Our academy classes, let me just clarify, it used to be 50 officers per class. And then sometimes we'll go a little bit over that. So we used to hire maybe about 150 officers a year, just as a standard, and sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. We've currently been given permission to hire anywhere from a class of 50 to a class of 80, depending on what we think our needs are. And of course, but if out of that, that group of, say, we whittle a list of 400 down to actually 150 viable candidates, out of that, we're probably only going to get about 65, 70 viable people to start the academy, and then we lose 10% of that. So you can see it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing. You try to chase those numbers, you try to get ahead of those numbers, but just because of how policing is and how academy classes run, it's very difficult to do that, especially in the current environment. And our folks do a great job with recruiting here. We don't really have an issue recruiting. It's just the time frame that it takes from testing to all the cognitive tests and things like that, and physical tests to get folks in the academy, and then a 7-month academy to actually graduate folks.
And Chief, just so that we can close out Councilman Polensik's line of questioning, one measurement that you might be able to provide to us that at least gives us a measuring stick is that you do have an indication of how many officers are eligible through the drop program that will be expiring off the drop program and or are at that age that they actually might retire. So even though they're not indicating that they are retiring, you do have a ballpark figure of who's actually eligible to retire. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman and the committee, we have a huge ballpark estimate, meaning an officer that's eligible to do their 8 years and drop and retire sometimes may not even enter the drop program for 2 years after their eligibility, which pushes them to, if we say, all right, this officer at 25 years and 48 years of age can enter drop, they may not enter drop until their 26th or 27th year, which pushes them out 2 more years. So we can try to plan for that, but unless the officers actually give us the information, then we can't specifically say we have 82 officers that came on in the year of 1989. They're eligible for drop at the end of that 8 years. So we know we're going to need at least 80 folks because some of those officers may retire at 5 years and drop. Some may retire at 6 or 7, and some may do the entire 8. So again, it's always a moving number. And we're working hard to try to bring those numbers further into focus. We're trying to work with our state pension board to really kind of look at, can you give us better data on the people that are actually in drop and when they started drop? Because again, you can start drop and you can leave drop in 5 years, or you can leave in 8 years, or anywhere in that 5 to 8 year period. It doesn't have to be the entire 8.
All right. Thanks for the clarification, Chief. And if Councilman Polensik wants to come back up, I'll leave the floor open for him later. Councilman Joe Jones, I have you up next, and then I don't see any hands raised. If anybody would like to make comments to the Safety Director and Chief, please use the raised hands option. I have Councilman Jones and then Councilwoman Jenny Spencer. Councilman Jones, you have the floor. It is 11:40, so just to make you aware, it's 11:40.
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate, and I will observe the time limits. And it's going to be very brief. I think Mike Polensek really hit on a number of issues that would be like some of the similar or same issues. And I don't know if the chief had heard my earlier comments. That were you able to? You wasn't able to hear. Some of the issues that I had brought up earlier, Chief, was the system right now, and I've heard what you've had to say, and it makes sense as it relates to having a number of police officers who have had the COVID virus, and that has impacted the police department. And I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, do we have some kind of rule in the contract that when we're in a case of we have issues, and I want to say, I heard a police officer say that the supervisors would then get into the patrol cars and then start policing the neighborhood in the contract. Is that something that we have in the contract where 270, how many supervisors do we have currently, Mr. Chairman, to the chief?
Chief?
Mr. Chair and the councilman, let me find it real quick for you. We have approximately 205 sergeants, 18 captains, 56 lieutenants. I'm sorry, 206 sergeants, 18 captains, 56 lieutenants for the division. And that doesn't include our command staff of 12 commanders, well, 13 commanders if you include the traffic commissioner, the 4 deputy chiefs, and myself.
Would those be considered or fall up under being supervisors?
Yeah, the majority of those sergeants and lieutenants are in the district operations, and those sergeants and lieutenants do patrol the streets. They don't, stay in the office. We have an officer in charge of a district, usually a sergeant on each shift. That's the office person, but the other sergeants assigned to that shift that are working that day are actually out there in patrol with the officers, as well as that lieutenant.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know, I couldn't see your screen, must have blacked out. Is everyone seeing the same thing I'm seeing?
We can hear him, but his picture is not up for whatever reason.
Okay, so the question was, how many supervisors do we have?
Through the chair of the councilman, I gave you those actual numbers. I can add them up for you to give the exact number.
So those
6 sergeants, we're budgeted for 213. We're 7 below right now. We actually just this morning did the assessment to promote an additional 5 sergeants before the end of the year. So we'll be within 2 of our budgeted number. We're budgeted for 57 lieutenants for the Division of Police. We currently have 56. And we're budgeted for 18 captains. We currently have 18 captains. We're budgeted 1 traffic commissioner. We currently have 1. 12 commanders. We currently have 12. 4 deputy chiefs. We currently have 4, and 1 chief.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Williams, I presume the entire council feels the same way I feel. We want to make sure that we are working with you and I know that you have a very difficult job, given the fact that we have an epic extinction in the nation, as probably being one of the most violent cities in this nation. And so that's a lot of stress and pressure. So, as this is being the elected official representing my area, is how do we make the system work better? Right now, the system is broken, and a lot of people won't use the term broken, and they want to kind of like hedge it and everything. And maybe that might not be the appropriate word, but it's not working in our area. I have to get up, Mr. Chairman, to the chief when people call me, and I go out at nighttime at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, knock on people's doors and tell them to turn the music down. I have to go out, Mr. Chairman, to the chief when there's prostitution. The police have been called, but the police didn't show up. And I go out and tell them, hey, you can't be doing this in this neighborhood. I have to go out, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, and I've done that this year, to tell a drug dealer he can't be selling his drugs over on East 189th Street, that he might as well take it over into the next neighborhood, not over here in this neighborhood. So there's a lot of stress on me as an elected official when, you know, I have citizens calling me because their homes have been shot up. And so when we call the police, we would want them to get out there, but they're unable to get on some of these calls, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, is because they're busy or they're tied up or it's not considered a top priority call. So for me, being an elected official and making these runs myself, as I had stated earlier in the testimonies, that, you know, I'm afraid going out here. You know, I never know what I'm going to run into. And so, you know, for me, I take my job seriously. I represent Ward 1, one of the last strongest community on the east side that has some level of stability. And, you know, I just want to know, you know, as Mr. Polensek stated earlier, you know, what is the game plan? How do we make it better? How can I, as an elected official, work with you and your staff, how we utilize our resources here as a council? If we need to give you more money, I'm more than, you know, I see the need. I think that we need to have at least 3, if not 400 or 500 more police officers. I'll settle for a 300 more police officer upgrade. And that'll be about 30 more additional $1 million a year. But we need to get those resources or funds, even if it's 200 police officers versus 300. But whatever it takes to get our streets back down quiet again, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Lobby whoever I need to lobby. And do whatever I can as a human being and as a resident of the city of Cleveland to make our streets safe again. And right now they're not safe. And so I just need to know, you know, and I've asked for, so I can get a grab on this. And I know that I've been to some meetings where there's a lot of time that needs to be dedicated just to understand how your operation works, and how we can keep our city safe. So, you know, what can we do as elected officials representing our individual wards, 17 wards that's in the city of Cleveland? What can we do to assist you, Mr. Chairman, in any way at all as it relates to the resources we have here as a council? Do you need more police officers? Have we taken an assessment of 1,600 just hasn't done it for us in the 3 years since I've been here. So do we need I guess, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, the question will be, do we need another 200 police officers to help, shore up the system?
Chief. And Chief, while you're coming up, can you also tell us how much it costs per a police officer ballpark, so that we can understand what it might cost for that?
Yeah, through the chair of the councilman, and don't quote me exact figures because we haven't really looked at it in a while, but it's about $1 million per 10 police officers to the budget, approximately. But to the councilman's question about what council can do, for us, it's about data and information. The more folks that we have out there willing to give us the information, the more folks willing to give us good, hard information, and the easier it is for us to pinpoint what's going on in a neighborhood or in a particular street within the city. And the easier it is for our officers to concentrate on that, take care of that before they can move on to something else. As the mayor always says, it's hard to just chase complaints. Get complaints here, complaints there, and you're always sending people to look at those complaints, and you never really get anything done. So the more information we get in, the more we can analyze that information, and then the more we can direct resources to actually take care of those critical problems, not getting rid of the smaller problems, but actually concentrating to do something about those critical problems, and then we can move on to other stuff. So, from my perspective, the better information we can get out of the community, and not for people to put themselves out there, but the better information we can get, the better job our officers can do out there. And then the second thing council can do is assist us in recruiting. Like I said, our folks do a great job already, but to have council actually speaking truth to power and really talking about folks that want to get involved in their community, being involved in public safety helps us out a great deal in our recruitment efforts.
And thank you. So I'd like to, offline see what I can do, Mr. Chairman, with the chief to set up a time where I can get whatever the information that you have so that I can put into my newsletter for recruiting. I think that we were talking about that earlier before you came on, the diversity of the police department. And then second, Mr. Chairman, to the director, how many, one of the things that we were talking about is traffic enforcement. I know that in the 4th district, which covers 6 wards, we only have 2 traffic enforcement cars. What do we need to do to up that to, having, and I don't know if that's indicative to all of the districts. Do all of them have 2 police cars each for traffic enforcement? Mr. Chairman, to the chief.
Through the chair to the councilman, each district is allotted within their operation 2 primary traffic cars. That's their only function, traffic. But that district commander has the ability to add to that. The district commanders usually add through that through their CSU units, which is days and afternoons. They're equipped to be traffic cars. And, our zone cars do traffic enforcement themselves, going to and from assignments or just out and about. They do traffic, they pull cars over, they write tickets. So it's not a question of having more dedicated traffic cars in the district. It may be a question of we just utilize the cars we have a lot better. But to your point, there's a lot going on out there in our city right now. And I'm not going to say traffic is not a priority. But when it comes to a call for service dealing with violence or making a traffic stop, those officers are going to go to that call for service dealing with violence.
Sure. So Mr. Chairman, knowing that, just listening to you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, talk about we're always constantly running after the complaints that are coming in. So it seems like that's tying up our police officers from being able to patrol in our neighborhoods and from being able to do traffic enforcement in a way in which we need to have it. And they're always responding to calls because the issue is such a major situation in our city in terms of the nature of violence that we're experiencing in an epic proportion. So would it be safe to say that right now our system as we're looking at it is just tied up chasing the issues right now? So we just don't have that ability and capacity to be able to go and do traffic enforcement as well as patrolling our streets, just having patrol cars in the area where there's visibility.
And just before Chief answers, Councilman Jones, you're at 15. So after Chief gives his answer, I'll let you wrap up and then we'll move on, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilman, that wasn't the point I was trying to make as far as chasing complaints. The point I was trying to make about complaints are the more specific the information, that makes it easier for us to deal with that issue and get on to another issue. For example, there are drug dealers, in the middle of the block on 189th Street. If we had specifics, the address of the house, the folks themselves that are conducting that drug activity, the license plates of the cars that are doing the drug deals up and down the street, then our guys can specifically go to those issues and handle that and take care of that and be on to the next. But if we just get 189th, the middle of the block, then we have to go on that block. We have to look for where that activity is occurring, and then we have to address it. So the better the information, the more efficient we can be in responding to that and taking care of that. As it relates to traffic, no, I don't think there's quite an issue with traffic enforcement. I think that there's just a lot of folks out there right now because a lot of folks aren't working. So we see a lot of folks just kind of driving. We have had increases in traffic fatalities, again, not just here in Cleveland, but around the state. And I mean, you guys see the billboards, the state billboards on whether it be 71 or I-90 that kind of have the traffic fatality stats up there almost on a daily, weekly basis. And it's not just something that happens here. But the other thing that gets to traffic enforcement is, with more enforcement comes more traffic pursuits, which puts more folks in danger out there for traffic enforcement. So you have to balance that. But I think our traffic guys do a great job. And you don't just have, as you know, Councilman Jones, there are not just the traffic enforcement officers in the district, but we have an entire Bureau of Traffic downtown with a couple dozen officers that actually go out into the neighborhoods to assist in enforcing traffic where we have trouble spots. We'll bring all those folks out for a period of time to enforce in that area. But on a routine basis, all those traffic officers downtown are assigned out in the neighborhoods to do traffic enforcements, and that's what they do.
Councilman Jones, closing remark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly just want to thank the chief and the safety director. I know that their job is daunting. If you guys could work with me, and I know that my colleagues in the 4th District would not be opposed to having more traffic enforcement in the 4th District, in particular in Ward 1. One of our major calls is the shots that are being fired at night. That's going on with and vandalization from 2 guys who are breaking in people's cars throughout our entire neighborhood. And 3, which is that the cars are just speeding up and down the street. So we're getting calls all the time about how crazy it is to just drive on our streets now in our neighborhood. So we definitely need help with traffic enforcement. And I believe, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, if we have an additional traffic enforcement consistent in our neighborhood, I believe that it will drive down all the other problems that we're talking about. I've seen this happen before when I was a councilman, before when Mike White was the mayor of the city of Cleveland. He had a strong traffic enforcement system under then Commander Mike McGrath, and that drove our crime down to like a country lane. We could hear birds chirping again in our neighborhood when we had strong traffic enforcement. So I'm a big fan, Mr. Chairman, to the chief of traffic enforcement. I've seen it work firsthand in the neighborhood. And I would ask if you guys would work with me in my neighborhood to get more traffic enforcement. I certainly would be appreciative of that. And the citizens of Ward 1 in Lee Harvard area would be appreciative of that.
Thank you, Councilman. And just to follow up on the councilman's points, Chief, one of the things we're going to be looking at, Chief and Safety Director, in the budget, because our budget reflects our priorities, is that we're going to look and see the staffing levels of traffic, because that seems to be something that everybody's very, involved with. So it's one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation before the budget retreat, because that's one of the things that we'll be underlining and looking at is staffing levels for all of these different units. So appreciate that. Another thing that Councilman Jones talked about, and something that we would like to do as a committee, Chief, is we would like to really open up this committee to do a tabletop exercise to really understand everything, what goes into the decision-making at the command staff level of how they deploy resources around traffic, where it gets routed to, if it's a homicide. I know a little bit about it, but I think that it would be good for us to do some kind of tabletop exercise to really actually walk through what each commander has to deal with while making decisions of how they actually deploy in the district. And I would love to work with you and Director Howard on how that could look. Everything from the calls to calls for service to the multiple areas that we know are high traffic areas to the homicides and everything else, that we could do some kind of tabletop to see how our resources are being deployed. And if you and Director Howard can talk with me about how we could do that, I would really appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Councilman Jones, for your line of questions. I have Councilwoman Spencer. And then after I have Councilwoman Jenny Spencer from the Great Ward of Ward 15, I don't see any other hands right now, but I'm gonna call on a couple of people because I know they have questions. So I'm gonna call on Casey after Jenny Spencer. So Jenny Spencer first, and then Councilman Brian Casey. Councilwoman Spencer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to Chief Williams and Director Howard. I first wanted to start by introducing myself. I'm still relatively new member of council and I haven't had the opportunity to meet you in person. I'm sorry, our first meeting is over Zoom. However, I'm pleased to meet you both today. And I just wanted to let you know I'm in learning mode as a new member, but I look forward to working together. I wanted to let you know, I wanted to express appreciation for, I work with in Ward 15, both the first and the second districts. I have the pleasure of knowing both Commander Stocko and Commander Fay. I consider myself to be a public servant. I know that my colleagues on council, this is what we're here to do is serve our communities. And I know that Commander Stocko and Commander Fay feel the same way. They are public servants and they wake up every day thinking about how to make Cleveland better, and specifically the first and the second districts. So I also know a number of individuals on their leadership teams, and I want you to know that I value those relationships with Commander Stocko and Commander Fay and what they do for our communities. I just have a couple of points I'd like to make, reflecting on what I've been hearing from my colleagues as well. First is, I hear the passion of my colleagues around, especially this, I think a number of issues, but staffing levels seems to continue to emerge, right? This concern and deep concern around, do we have what we need to serve Cleveland residents? And I think that that passion is really a reflection of the pain of our residents. And in some cases, the fear. Many people are experiencing fear. And my residents too are suffering, and there is fear in Ward 15. So that said, I wanted to note that I'm not as prescriptive as my colleagues at this point when it comes to saying we need X number of additional officers, or we need, in terms of what the staffing plan should be. I think we are at a critically important time in the life of our nation in terms of national dialogue around policing, serving communities, mitigating crime in our communities. And I don't want to say, I want to see you come to the budget hearing with X number of, X millions of dollars for more officers. Maybe that is the answer, maybe it's not. But I would encourage you to really come forward with what you need and be really transparent about it, and in a perhaps holistic way. So I want to hear from you, from your point of view, how are we going to serve our diverse communities? I'm open to many different approaches to policing, but know that I respect the passion of my colleagues very much, because I know it's, we all hear the stories from our residents and we know that they are suffering. So one more comment I wanted to make is that the chair indicated that our next meeting of this committee will be January 13th. And on that date, we will be discussing the May 30th after action review. Just wanted to indicate that I will be paying close attention to that conversation. A lot of residents in Ward 15 were physically present to protest the death of George Floyd, and we're there on that day, and they have a lot of questions. And as their representative, I just wanted you to know that January 13th is a day that I will, be coming prepared, having read the report, and we'll look forward to dialogue with you on that. So, and then just one more point is that the traffic piece has come up a lot, and that's amazing. Here in Ward 15 too, the same, right? Speeding is a huge concern across the board of residents. I just wanted to note that for my colleagues, that I think in terms of traffic, while more enforcement is always welcome, I would say that overall the city has been reluctant to implement other approaches to speeding, including traffic calming. Councilwoman Santana referred to speed bumps earlier. There are a lot of different ways to calm traffic. In addition, speed bumps are one physical mechanism to do that. So I would just say that overall, just wanted all of you as my colleagues to know that in terms of the speeding issue, really, I think it's a mix. I think it's a combination of enforcement, but also embracing approaches to traffic calming that have to do with the built environment. And that is not the Division of Police or the Department of Public Safety. That's probably traffic engineering, right? So I'm hoping that we can really look at the speeding and the traffic concerns holistically, because I think it's necessary to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Chief, as Ms. Spencer asked those comments, just one thing I want to reiterate, Chief and Safety Director, and I say this with the utmost respect. Both of you guys know the amount of respect and admiration I have for both of you. But we can't hear about things in the newspaper. We got to be able to get after action reports and those kind of things to us, to this committee, or else it is, our citizens are going to come to us and ask us for questions. So we should be afforded the opportunity to be able to look at those reports before a lot of the media gets a hold of them, because even the media calls us out and says, well, why haven't they done a hearing on this? And we know we're dealing with time constraints, and we were in transition between myself and former council chair for Public Safety Committee Zone, but this council should always be able to get stuff in advance. So just want to put that plug in before we move forward. But to Councilwoman Spencer's questions, do you have any responses, Director in Chief?
I'd like to just touch on that. Recruitment is key. Chief is correct. We're looking at and we received approval for classes between 50 to 80 in class size. And recruitment is key to that. And of course, as always, we welcome any opportunity to partner with council to recruit or engage in the recruitment activity outside of the ward, because that does help us maintain our numbers, meet thresholds, and maintain staffing levels. Recruitment is something that we're very passionate about. I just wanted to make sure that we said that.
Got it.
Well,
Chief,
Mr.
anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, to the committee, first of all, welcome, Councilwoman Spencer. Welcome to the body. It kind of seems like you're wise beyond your years. We always say at the table, and the mayor's always said that, a lot of the things that we talk about in public safety aren't just public safety issues. And we can't just center on public safety as the end-all be-all solution to a lot of problems that we have out there. We have to look holistically. And you brought up the point about traffic enforcement and speeding and things like that. It's not just putting cars out there and write tickets. It's about changing behavior and changing the landscape of how cars traverse through the city of Cleveland. And it's been done in a lot of other places, and we do need to take a look at that, whether it's speed bumps, whether it's other things that kind of slow and bring traffic to one lane in certain jurisdictions and certain streets, so that you don't have that speedway type of mentality because everything's wide open. So thank you, Councilwoman. I welcome that. As it relates to staffing, staffing is always critical. And I try to kind of explain the process of how staffing from the beginning is done, as far as recruiting folks in, getting testing done, getting those classes actually selected and situated in place, and then graduating and losing on average that 10%, but graduating the best of the best so that they can serve out here. And we welcome council in that recruiting effort. I said earlier that we really don't have an issue with recruiting numbers. It's just the process, I don't want to say is what it is, because we worked on this process since 2014 to get it down, and we've shaved months off of the process, but it's still a long process. And that 7-month academy is something that we just can't change because that is the product that goes out there and serves our community. And we don't want to skimp on the training that those officers get. So we've always looked at ways on the front end to reduce that time frame, whether it's in our physical testing, our medical testing, our psychological testing, whether we add folks to that process, doctors, clinicians, psychologists, things like that, to speed up that part of the process. And we're actually looking at that for this new list that we're vetting now. How do we knock that from 4 months down to 2 months and then get those folks in the academy a lot quicker? But we do welcome council's input. We also welcome you guys in the recruiting efforts. Nothing helps in our recruitment like a person that lives in this city talking to folks that they know that are passionate about this city and want to serve this city and joining public safety. We can do all the advertising we want. We can have radio spots and social media stuff, and we can have our officers out there, doing what they do. But to hear your local council person that lives in the city, loves the city, and serves the city saying, hey, you would make a great police officer, a great firefighter, or EMT, there's nothing that compares to that. So we welcome any collaboration we can do with council in that regard. Thank you.
Councilwoman, do you have anything else?
No, thank you. That's great for today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief and Director, can we make sure that we get that after action report to everybody so that all the council can read that? I'm not sure if everybody has gotten that yet.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I now have Councilman Brian Casey. Councilman Brian Casey, you have the floor. I don't see any other hands at this time. Remember, if you want to speak, please put it in the raised hand function. Councilman Brian Casey, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, to the chief or the safety director, currently, how many police officers are out on administrative leave due to COVID?
Through the chairman, I'll have to pull up my sheet that has our actual COVID number on it. I'm on my tablet. My computer is kind of frozen, so I'll have to pull that sheet up for you. But we track that on a daily basis.
Hopefully you can have that when it's done unfreezing by the time we're done with this meeting. A couple of things that we talked about before was real-time staffing. And we understand that there's, 206 sergeants, 18 captains, 56 lieutenants, 12 commanders, 4 DCs, 1 chief. The rest are patrolmen. But one thing that we don't know as a council, and one thing that we'd like to start being educated on, are real-time numbers, right? So what those numbers don't include are individuals who are out, who are on leave, maybe they're on some sort of furlough, whatever. So we'd like to start getting real-time numbers at our regular safety committee meetings, if that's going to be available to us. Also, one thing that we haven't had in quite a while, chief or safety director, is the liaison to council. Now, last year, we did a robust deep dive into police mini stations, chief, and you actually got a proposal last year that the council was interested in having mini stations again. That kind of fell off the radar. And one of the reasons that was given as to not having mini stations is because we had a liaison to city council and we haven't had one in a while. So where are we at in the hiring process of a liaison to Cleveland City Council?
Chief?
Yeah, Mr. Councilman, through the chair of the councilman, we're still evaluating that. There are a couple key positions within the division that we've interviewed folks for. We just haven't found the right fits. One is the council liaison position. As it relates to the mini stations, each district has community engagement officers assigned to that district, as well as there are 15 almost the same community engagement officers assigned downtown to Bureau of Community Relations that go out and assist the CEOs in each district. And that was one of the things that we put in place of mini stations, because if you take like the old kind of structure for mini stations, there were 2 officers assigned to each council ward in a mini station, and they primarily work day shift, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. So at the time, I think we had 21 council positions at the time. So those 42 officers were not available to do anything else. They didn't do traffic enforcement, although they did tow cars and things like that, answered some of the community complaints, but they didn't do drug enforcement. They didn't do traffic enforcement. They didn't do a lot of the meat and potato things that we need done in the division. Right now, again, our plan is to increase the CEO participation because they directly link back to that entire district operation. They can bring additional resources out when they go, and they can also educate officers or assist in educating officers on the things that are needed in that community and the things that are happening in that community. So that's kind of the model we have right now. We haven't totally disregarded anything related to mini stations, but right now, what I hear from council and what I hear from the residents, because I'm out there a lot, and the director's out there too, and what he hears is we need boots on the ground as it relates to violent crime enforcement, and that's kind of our priority right now.
All right, Safety Director, your thoughts on mini stations?
No, I think that I agree with the chief that, you know, if we tie officers up to this mini stations, that's a number of officers that we can't have on the street, and we need to have the officers out on the street. Now we have looked at alternatives, how to increase presence, especially in high crime areas, but to do an increased presence of officers in the community through a number of means. And we're going to continue to have that discussion, but there are several options that we are discussing.
All right, well, the both of you make it sound like just because we would have mini station police officers in each ward, that we wouldn't have, we're taking individuals off the streets, and those individuals obviously wouldn't be taken off the streets. We would just have them in different areas. So it's more of a deployment thing than it is taking officers off the streets. To the safety director, one things that we talked about was cameras. Can Cleveland City Council get a list of where all the city cameras are throughout the city, their locations, whether they're working, how many we have, et cetera? Before we were told that we couldn't get that because it's a homeland security issue. I don't buy that. So I'm looking for the location of every city-owned camera within the city of Cleveland, where they're in their location. Could that be provided?
Yeah, we could work on getting that list, but I have some information for you, Councilman, that we have 1,383 cameras specifically related to districts that are outdoor cameras. The system that we have has a total of 1,494 cameras. With that, there are 20 currently that are down, and there are orders to put in for repair. So we have 98.7% of our camera system in the city up and running.
All right, and I think the number of cameras per ward and their locations would be very helpful for a future hearing.
So I can provide that. So for the councilman, to answer your question, is that first district we have 165 cameras, second district 166, third district 497, fourth district 331, fifth district 224 cameras.
Could you repeat that again?
Yes. First district 165, second district 166, third district 497, fourth district 331, fifth district 224.
Got that, Chairman?
Our system has a total of 1,494 cameras.
All right, and through the chair to the safety director, of the 5 police districts, which one would you say has the least amount of crime? We'll say part 1 crime, and we're just talking in general. I don't need specific numbers, but in general, which one of those 5 districts have the least amount of crime?
Councilman, I don't want to give that number off the top of my head. I'd have to look at data.
Okay, Chief,
Yeah.
would you know? And I'm not looking. I know you didn't come prepared for that, but with specific numbers, but in general.
Yeah, in general, District 1 has the least amount of violent crime.
Okay. All right. Through the chair to the chief, how many homicide detectives do we currently have in homicide?
Through the chair of the councilman, we currently have 18 homicide detectives. Their projected staffing number is actually 19 for homicide with 4 supervisors. Our 2020 staffing plan, which was approved by the mayor in 2017, would up their number to 23 assigned to homicide. We've taken a look at that over the last year, and I bumped that number up to 25. And that's the goal, to assign 25 full-time detectives to homicide.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, to the chief, by when do you plan to achieve that goal?
As soon as possible, through the chair of the councilman. Again, I mean, we have a current list for homicide. We just put a detective in homicide about a week and a half ago. Homicide has a couple folks that we know are retiring, so we're trying to keep that number static, trying to make sure they maintain that 18 or 19 for now, and then trying to go over that number. But in addition to the 18 that are currently there, we also detail 2 detectives for a 6-month period to homicide to assist with some of the investigatory stuff, some of the evidence management stuff, assist our homicide detectives in any way possible, some of the legwork stuff, so that our actual homicide detectives can do the actual investigative work. And we call it our officer enhancement program. So we bring detectives from throughout the division, and we assign them 2 at a time to homicide. And they get the experience of actually working the highest level violent crime investigative cases. And that homicide unit itself gets some additional resources.
All right, and then I'm sorry, I missed the number. You said how many do you know that are retiring? Leaving homicide?
Through the chair of the councilman, I know of 2 right off the bat. And, 1 for retirement, and I think 1 for medical reasons. And also, I neglected to say, in addition to the 18 that are there, we also have 1, 2, 3 outside agency detectives assigned. 1 from the county sheriff's, 1 from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and 2 from the FBI that assist our homicide unit investigation.
All right, so we currently have 18 of our own Cleveland homicide detectives actively currently working cases, and then 3 others who from outside agencies who are assisting.
Right, 3 that assist in cases and 1 actual analyst in the homicide unit. I'm sorry, 2 actual analysts, because we recently assigned one of the analysts from our real-time crime center to actually assist in the homicide unit and the work that they do every day, along with, again, 4 supervisors that supervise that unit.
And then with your goal, and I think it's a good goal of 25, knowing that we're losing 2, are you currently actively working on replacing those 2 when they do leave, or are you currently active to boost that department?
Through the chair of the councilman, we're currently looking at replacing the 2 that we know are going to leave. And then we'll take a look at our staffing, because we're also looking at staffing in sex crimes, staffing in DV, staffing in the districts, so that they can increase their number of detectives in their detective bureau. You may remember that we have a commitment of 30 officers to the Legend Task Force. We've currently only put 15 officers there. So there are another 15 officers that are committed to the Legend Task Force. And then again, officers in our Bureau of Traffic, our Community Services Unit, on and on and on. So when I talk about, the act of staffing and deployment and juggling that and getting classes in so that we have enough folks, so we won't pull too much from district operations, the staff specialized in support units, you could, I think to Mr. Chair, to your point, if you guys could really look at how staffing goes in the division in a real-time sense, how folks, like we're promoting 5 people. I think 2 of those folks are coming from specialized units to sergeant. And they're not going to be replaced until this class of 37 graduates sometime in April or May. I'm sorry, until they graduate actually sometime in June or July. So we promote folks because we have the openings, because we need supervisors out there to supervise and manage our troops, but they have to come from somewhere. And we just don't have this, endless pool of candidates to pull and replace people that move out of homicide, people that we move from the districts into homicide, and people that are promoted out of specialized units and out of districts in the supervisory ranks.
Well, and I know that that's been an issue. We've talked about this almost every year since I've been on council, but it almost feels like we're a hamster on a wheel that just keeps going and going, trying to figure out, how to get somewhere, even though we continue with those moving parts. One of the things that we had talked about prior to the administration coming on was the consent decree and the Department of Justice. And one of the robust conversations that we have had is regarding police officers who are frontline officers who feel that they are unable to perform their duties as police officers because of the backlash that comes from either the consent decree or the administration. I'm going to say this to the safety director and the chief, and we have a problem with morale on the Cleveland Police Department from our frontline police officers. And I believe, Chief, one of your quotes earlier was changing behavior when it comes to the morale of recruitment. The morale on the Cleveland Police Department for the frontline guys in regards to the administration or the fear of being able to perform their duties because of disciplinary actions from the administration because of maybe the consent decree or the philosophy of the chiefs and the deputy chiefs of the police department is something that needs to be addressed, I believe, internally. When you have police officers who don't want to perform on the streets because of a fear of a write-up, even though they're doing their duty as a police officer to protect and serve or whatever, and they're not violating anybody's constitutional rights. I know one of the things that we were discussing were general police orders, right? And do they coincide with the charter of the city of Cleveland, or do they not? And one of the things, Chief, is the police chase. And one thing that still claws at me is the incident of the guy on a motorcycle who pointed a gun at two different police officers, and they were not allowed to chase that. Now I know what the answer is going to be, because we've had this discussion in the past, and it's all about safety of others involved and everything else. But if you're that police officer who would just have a gun pointed at them, and it happened that the same person did it on two different occasions, and they're not allowed to apprehend that individual or even chase them, what kind of message are we sending to individuals out there who are not law-abiding citizens? And the chase. Hang on one more second, Chair. And the chase policy. And I understand that you need to take into account the safety of the general public when it comes to chase policy. But what kind of message are we sending to criminals out there who can carjack somebody or commit a crime and know that the police may not chase them?
Mr. Secretary, Councilman, on the morale thing, I'll touch on that first. Morale is low throughout the division, throughout the city. It doesn't have to be a police agency. Morale is low this year based on a ton of things, and we talked about some of those. If there are issues that officers have, they have a way to get those issues to the chief's office or to their commander, and we take care of those issues. If they think that either the command staff of the division or, as you said, the administration of the city is holding them back in some way, I'd like to hear examples of that. I know you brought up the pursuit policy. I think our pursuit policy is one of the best in the country. And I think it not only saves a lot of lives, but it also gives clear guidance to our officers on when to pursue and when not to pursue. And as it relates to violent crime, if there's a violent crime committed, our officers can pursue for that violent crime. The issue that you talked about, the incident, the guy on the motorcycle, again, we live in the city. We've seen traffic things. We know that a 3,000-pound four-door police vehicle is not going to catch what we call a crotch rocket out there on the streets of the city of Cleveland. At night, it's just going to endanger more people, including those police officers themselves. So that supervisor used their discretion, which they have within our policy, to terminate that pursuit. Had we had other assets in the area, our Bureau of Traffic motorcycle guys, that would have been a better option, or our helicopter been up, that would have been a better option. We would have definitely maintained that pursuit. But keeping in mind the safety of those officers and the public, that supervisor terminated that pursuit, and I support that. If there is any way for us to apprehend that person, I'm sure that supervisor would allow officers to conduct themselves in that manner. But again, my position is not to risk the lives of folks, especially for a traffic violation. And I get a ton of complaints from members of this body about pursuits that come into our city just for traffic, where people are hurt, where property's damaged, where officers are hurt, where police vehicles are lost, and it's just for traffic. And I get a ton of those complaints all the time from members of this body. So my job is to balance what's best for the city as far as safety and how we protect our residents and our officers with what's necessary to keep everybody safe out there.
If I can
All
add to that,
Go ahead.
just to echo what the chief says, our officers, they're expected to do their duty and serve the citizens of Cleveland in a professional and constitutional manner. And when they don't, there has to be accountability. And that accountability is important to maintain a good quality police officer. The majority of officers, they do that. They do their jobs every day, and they do it while protecting the community and balancing those the need to protect the constitutional rights. And for the ones that don't, there has to be accountability. And in addition to that is that we have to keep in mind many of the folks who commit crimes, they do so without regard to the safety of the community. And a lot of decisions go into the thought process of what actions law enforcement should take. And a primary factor is the safety of the community and how we, public safety, do our jobs. And that's a balance that is expected of the citizens, that they expect from us, and that we will follow and maintain.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Casey, on that point, before you before you make any last remarks, I just want clarification that a lot of this is attributed to the discipline matrix that you guys put in place through the consent decree. To Councilman Casey's question, has it been more low morale since this document has been put in place? Is this document too rigid? Can it be more flexible? Is this a mandate of the consent decree? Just trying to understand if this discipline matrix might be ornery. And then also on the other side, does it help when we go through arbitration, because you have people that were disciplined for similar incidents, whereas opposed in the past, it was uneven discipline. So how does the discipline matrix play into this, to Councilman Casey's point?
So I think that the disciplinary matrix provides a mechanism to do balanced and fair discipline. I've had several disciplinary hearings and have used the disciplinary matrix, and it's effective. I would have to speak with law with regard to anything related to arbitration. I can't speak to that, but I will say that I believe the disciplinary matrix it's been fair, and it's been a good tool for us.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to the committee, couple points. One, the matrix was in place before the consent decree was implemented. Former Chief McGrath, before he became safety director in 2014, actually started on the disciplinary guidance matrix along with Assistant Safety Director Tim Hennessy, when he worked for the director over here in the chief's office, started back in 2012. As the
Repeat, Chief, you broke up.
Rose.
I'm sorry, my internet connection is unstable for some reason. But former Chief McGrath started working on the matrix in 2012. And he started that process because a lot of folks, a lot of our officers thought that discipline was arbitrary, that an officer that committed similar violations would get starkly different disciplinary outcomes. And we couldn't have that. So we put something in place that clearly spells out, if you commit this group of infractions, your discipline will range between 1 and 3 days, period. If you commit this group, it's 6 to 8 days. If you commit this group of infractions, it's anywhere from 8 to 10 day suspension, and anything over that goes to the safety director for adjudication. So it's clearly spelled out, and there has to be a range because there are different levels of infractions within those different groups. And we have 3 group categories. Prior to 2014, we didn't have that. So Chief McGrath saw it necessary, and I backed him on it because I was deputy chief at the time, that we needed a guide, a written guide that every officer, every citizen could take a look at and see exactly what the specification was, what the actual incident entailed, and then what the range of discipline could be if found guilty of that violation. And the matrix is held up in arbitration to the point that some other folks made as a useful tool, as a valuable tool for the division. But I got to stress, this has nothing to do with the Department of Justice. Chief McGrath was trying to get this thing in place prior to 2012 so that we had something that officers could look at and that we could be assured that discipline was not arbitrary or capricious, that it was in line with what we do for every officer, that it was fair.
All right, Mr. Chairman, to the chief.
Can we get that, Chief? Can we get that discipline matrix?
And not only the matrix of what the 3 groups are, but can we also get the numbers of write-ups, or I don't know what you call them, disciplinary actions for each group? In other words, did
Each of the discipline matrix categories, right?
Right, yeah. So there's 3. I'm from what I'm hearing from the chief, there's 3 different groups that a police officer could get written up for, disciplined. If a police officer is disciplined, it falls into one of those 3 categories, one of those 3 groups, correct? Can we get the numbers for 2019 and 20 of how many police officers were disciplined in each of those 3 groups?
Through the chair to councilman, I can try to get you that, but that's going to be a huge task for our folks. We have hundreds of disciplinary cases every year.
My
So
point exactly.
we're talking about 300 cases. And like I reviewed a case yesterday with our case prep lieutenant. There was one officer that had 6 different specifications that ranged through group 1s and group 2s. So with each disciplinary letter, we have to look back to see what the specifications were, what the groups were for each individual officer, for each of those probably about 300 officers, and count those up for each officer for each specification. And that's going to be a huge task. What we can do is, and what we do is we actually print out, and it's a public record, almost on a monthly basis, all the discipline that was held for that month. And it'll list the specifications and the group categories for each officer and what they were found guilty of, what was dismissed, and what their actual disciplinary corrective action was. And you can look officer by officer to see this officer was charged with 3 specifications. They were all group 1 specifications, and 2 of them were dismissed. The officer got a written reprimand. So you can see that for each officer. We can give you that.
Okay.
Councilman?
That's a start. That'll get us going.
So we'll start with that, but we actually do want to see all of it. And then if Councilman has any further follow-up, we'll follow up with you through myself and Antilli, Chief, okay?
Real quick, because the answers that I asked for were kind of long. If I could just, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, according to the Cleveland Division of Police, not the coroner's office or notcleveland.com, how many homicides have there been currently to date in the city of Cleveland?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the councilman, we currently, our records indicate 169 homicides. And the difference that you'll see with the medical examiner's report, any person that dies at the hands of another or at the hands of violence is listed as a homicide for the ME's office. So if a police officer kills a person, it's listed as a homicide by the medical examiner's office. If you attack me in my home and I defend myself and kill you.
Well, it stopped there, so I don't know where we went after that. Last I heard, Chief, was that I broke into your home and you were going to kill me.
Not quite, Councilman. No, but any justifiable homicide.
It's still listed as a homicide.
Yes. So the medical examiner counts every homicide. A person that died at the hands of another is a homicide. They count every single one, whether it's a police officer defending himself or a citizen defending themselves. We only count homicides that are actual homicides, where there's a victim, there's a suspect.
Okay, and of those 169, how many have been solved?
I don't have that exact number through the chair to the councilman, but I'll get you the solve rate for homicides.
So, and on this last point that I'd like to make, Mr. Chairman, to the chief and the safety director, and Chief, we had this discussion last year, how Cleveland Police needs to do a better job of telling their positive stories or starting to control the message that gets out to the media. And the perfect example is the chase policy, right? It is portrayed out there that you could come into the city of Cleveland, commit a crime, and a police officer is not going to chase you. According to you, that is not correct, right? So we need to start doing a better job at telling our positive stories and controlling the message. So in other words, when we hear a story about police officers are not allowed to chase criminals, that's just not true. And that needs to come from, the top down, whether it comes from the safety director's office or the chief's office. We can't allow the media to control the message that gets out through the Cleveland Police Department. And the Cleveland Police Department has a lot of great people that work for it. It's a hardworking police department, and there's a lot of good that comes out. But unfortunately, when it comes to crime, all we hear about are the negative things. So we need to do a better job on, telling positive stories that come out of the police department as well. I want to thank the safety director, the chief, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your line of questioning, Councilman Casey. Appreciate it. And Chief, I know that chase policy is very near and dear to a lot of people's heart. I know that Councilman Slife also had some questions about it, as well as I know that I've questioned a lot of times about the suburban communities being able to come and chase indiscriminately 15 cars deep into the city of Cleveland. So at some point in time, please be expecting that we are going to do a comprehensive hearing on the chase policy to really understand and make suggestions as a council what we need to do. Thank you, Councilman Casey. Thank you for that line of questioning. Chief, you had a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, on the pursuit policy. We don't call it chase policy, it's a pursuit policy. The pursuit policy was put in place, I think back in 2016, the current policy that we have, and we revised it a couple times. Councilman Casey, you'll remember that we had meetings actually in your ward on Puritas Avenue at the church down on Puritas, specifically about the pursuit, because people had the perception that the City of Cleveland Division of Police has a no chase policy. We don't have a no chase policy. We have a pursuit policy that guides officers on when and when not to engage in a vehicular pursuit. And I don't know how many times I've said this since 2016, our officers chase criminals all the time, but they do so within the guidelines of our pursuit policy. I don't know how many times I can say that. And if we want to go over the 15 pages of that pursuit policy, page by page, Mr. Chair, if you want to take a look at that, we can give you guys a policy. It's public record. I think the council has had it a couple times. By all means, take a look at it. we're in the process of adding some things to that pursuit policy as we speak. So now's the perfect time.
Add a few things that you're going to add, and then please resend it to council. Keep in mind that we have several new members of council, and I want to make sure that they get briefed and that they get up to speed as well. Okay.
Yes.
I have enough for another couple comments, and then I promised everybody that we'll get out of here by 1. You guys have been very patient. I do see Joe Jones, Councilman Joe Jones. I don't know if the dean would like something to say, but then I'm going to close with final remarks after that. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have a copy of the policy, and I appreciate the comments of the chief. I was listening intently. The scenario we had was a meeting of the teachers and parents and community in my neighborhood, and the year was 2019, and it was talking about the closing of Whitney Young School. And so we were trying to get a handle over the issue. And we had a number of residents come in screaming and hollering, who some of which were left out of the meeting. And a teacher was actually carjacked. And so she was carjacked at one of the meetings I was holding up at the Harvard Community Service Center. And while she was out in the parking lot and the meeting had convened, I went out there, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, and I talked to the police officer who was on the scene at the time. And so as she was getting herself gathered together, which was a school teacher who was mugged and her car was taken from her, then over the radio, we heard another police officer who had saw the car on, Dove Avenue in Ward 2. And so at the time of hearing it, I asked the officer, so what are they going to do? This is a crime that has been committed. She has just been violently carjacked, and the officers dispatched over, and they said not to pursue it. And so I didn't understand that at the time. So what should have been the course of the action at that time when you know that the car that has been stolen has been seen over on another avenue, been called in over the radio? I was just happenstance right there when I heard it. What should have happened in that situation, Mr. Chairman, to the chief?
The chairman and the councilman, without knowing all the facts, there's a difference between a stolen car and a carjacking. A physical carjacking where physical force is used or a weapon is produced is different than I had my car outside running with the keys in it, and as I was coming out the door, a kid jumped in my car and took off. Those are two different scenarios. So again, without having all the facts of exactly what happened and without knowing what that officer relayed over the radio, I can't give you an answer to that.
Right. So it's situations like that that caused me to have a pause. Because normally if someone was violently carjacked in our community and another police officer who is on the streets see that car, personally, me and the citizens of this neighborhood feel that the police need to go get them. And at the end of the day, we need to set the tone in this city that you can't just come over here, carjack our citizens, rob us on the streets. And there's no repercussions of it. And so right now we're in a state over here where it's serious, and it seems like the bad guys are just getting away with everything. They're just running roughshod over our district and our neighborhood. So it's like I need help over here, and so I'd love to take a look at that policy. Review it. I may not feel and have the same sentiments of what has been shared thus far. I believe if you commit a crime in this city and we have police officers that's supposed to protect us, then police officers need to get to work, and we need to make our neighborhood safe. This is our community, not theirs. And we need to establish, just like it is in Shaker Heights, when you go over to Shaker Heights, everybody knows on Lee Road, slow down. because those guys are going to come and get you if you go fast in Shaker Heights. Fairlawn, same thing. In those neighborhoods, it's law and order. And we need to establish law and order on our streets. It makes no sense for us as citizens to pay for a service that we're not getting. So at the end of the day, I'm very serious about it. Our community is serious about it. You start enforcing the laws on the books, then that will quiet down all this shooting at night. You know, people can't go to sleep because people just don't care. They just pop off their guns. They're shooting in houses. It's like a wild, wild west, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, I've had it. And so, you know, taking a look at that policy is going to be important. Keeping our city safe and setting the tone that you have safety in our neighborhood is important. Again, if we were in any other neighborhood that I shut off earlier before, it'd be a state of emergency crisis. Those people in those communities would not have it. Rocky River would not have it. Valley View would not have it. None of those neighborhoods, Chagrin Falls, Shaker, right next to me. If we were having the kind of onslaught and the killing of our citizens, it's like a killing spree in the city. If we were having that in any of these other communities, we would be in a state of emergency. The papers would write about it. It would become epic, and they would be doing something about it right away.
Councilman,
so I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman.
You wrap up because we got it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just saying that, you know, I want traffic enforcement in my neighborhood.
We got
if these guys are out here doing these sinister crimes and doing the things that they're doing in our community, we need to establish some foundation. And that foundation is enforcing the rule of law in our city.
Point taken. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman
Thank you,
Palinsik,
sir.
I think we close up. Thank you, Councilman Palinsik. We can't hear you, Councilman.
You hear me now, Mr. Chairman? Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say again, thank you, the chair, to my colleagues who asked some very, very important questions and expressed some deep-seated concerns, and to the safety director and the chief. What I need to say is I have served in virtually every position there is in council over my time. But I want to say to the chief and the safety director, what is different from us and you is that we can't hire, we can't fire, we can't deploy, we can't supervise. The charter is very clear on that point. So we are legislators, but what we have become ombudsmen. We have become complaint takers. We have become pin cushions every day for complaints that come in, especially now more than ever before in public safety. So I want to drive the message home to the safety director and the chief. It's not that council members are hostile or in an adversarial role, but we're expressing the viewpoints of our constituents because we're listening to them every day. We're hearing them. We're hearing the small businesses in our community. We're interacting with them. We're interacting with our residents. And you can tell from the council members who express concerns and many more who are tied up in other meetings and other functions at this point, who could not be on the Zoom meeting. Just the overall frustration and concern. So as we go again through the end of this year and into next year, and I think the chairman has stated this very clear, it's about having the right data. It's about having the right numbers. You know, to hear that 160 officers are out with COVID-19. First time we heard that today. We know now that we have lost more officers than we hired this year. We can't find ourselves in that situation next year. We all got to be on the same page. So I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to be in an adversarial role, because I believe we are in this together, the council and the administration. But just so you understand and understand well the situations that council members find themselves in. This is a very difficult time. You're dealing with very difficult issues as well as it pertains to policing. And so as we go into next year, we got to be in lockstep. We got to be on the same page. We got to hire the right number of officers. We got to deploy the right number of people. We have to make sure the specialized units are up to speed. And we got to be working together with the outside resources, the federal government, because I'm a firm supporter of Operation Legend. Because I worked with you on Operation CLE, 2-3 years ago, and I knew how that worked. So we just have to be on the same page and getting together, and whether it be the safety cameras, the security cameras, we cannot be misled. Like, we were told to put together the lists, and we put together our list and then nothing happened. So we just have to be on a different plat. And I hope I'm not only directing this to you in a safety, but I'm directing it to my former colleague and friend, the mayor of the city of Cleveland. We got to do things differently going into next year, because if not, there will be friction. There will be problems, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants it. We all got to be on the same page, working together. So on that note, I want to again say to the chairman, I thank him for taking the time. Blaine, thank you for taking this up this issue, because you and I have been talking and interacting, and I think we're on the right track. We're on the right track. That's what we have to do. We have to make a difference. Thank you. Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, and my good friend, Honorable Mike Polensek. I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for really taking your time and spending time today. I want this to be a proactive committee. And Councilman Polensek hit it on the nose. We cannot hire, fire, nor can we supervise. But we do have the opportunity to set the budget. We have the opportunity to look at the data, to make policy and to help craft policy. We have the ability to put legislation in place. Remember, I really want us to look at the consent decree and start to think about what we want to legislate compared to what we have to abide by in the consent decree, and things that we actually have the ability to legislate. We also have the ability to provide oversight. So those are some of the duties of council. I agree with Councilman Polensek. I've had a great working relationship. I'm not shy about it, working closely with Director Howard, as well as former Director McGrath, as well as Chief Williams and all of the predecessors before. So this is what we have done. But I want to share this and say this with my colleagues on the committee. I cannot be successful, and we will not be successful without each other. Our colleague, Phyllis Cleveland, is dealing with a very tough situation right now. And we have to do what I call in the football terms, gang tackle some of these issues. Sometimes we got to get out of the bifurcation of our wards. And if Joe Jones has a problem, I want him to call me and others, and we're over there with you. I believe in having a strong, unified front as a council to really make sure we address some of these issues. We have a tough job. I won't sugarcoat this. There's going to be times when we become the pincushion from everybody from activists, police officers, community members, and others, because everybody is frustrated. And we know the kind of frustration that we're dealing with right now. But this is a time when we really need to lean on each other and deal with the budget, the policies, and the other things. I would just tell everybody that I'm a person that likes to get things done. I know how to pound on the table when I have to, but I would rather try to figure out solutions to dealing with this egregious homicide issue that we have in the city, as well as traffic problems and the control. I think Jenny Spencer put it well. We also need to design streets in a better way to have traffic calming and not just expect to just arrest everybody, because we're not going to arrest our way out of this, everybody. This is going to take multiple ways of us addressing this and dealing with this. But let's make it clear, we got to work together as a council, and you have my commitment that I'm going to have the most transparent, most open. I think my colleague, Councilman Zone, did a great job. I have big shoes to fill, but I really, really want to make this committee successful. And the only way we're going to be successful is if people can touch, feel, and see that we're actually helping making a difference in their life. So I thank all my colleagues for joining me today. Hopefully this set the temperature for what we want to accomplish in 2021. Once again, we didn't deal a lot with fire and EMS. I want you to reach out to Ann Tilley if you have specific questions about fire and EMS. We'll synthesize that document and make sure we get it to you. We also have some follow-up documents we'll get from the administration. But thank you all so much for your patience and your time. And once again, let's continue to make Cleveland the place that it should be. We can only get through this together, just like we are with COVID-19. Thanks, everybody. This committee hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Hey, John, do a end all